he'd have a report for us.
Oh, good, okay.
Okay, I just want to make sure you're good with that, because I have Alan down, and then you can
Yeah.
fill in anything.
If there's any gaps, but I saw Alan was taking good notes at the meeting, so.
I didn't take any notes.
We got Alonzo twice, Clark twice, Alan once.
Okay.
Anybody heard from Alonzo?
No, it's unusual for him to be late.
So this is kind of like this.
Yeah, even the downloaded one takes forever.
Oh.
Yeah,
Forget.
it's just the file size.
You see Alonzo on the computer?
Property.
On security, I mean,
Oh,
security.
yep, coming upstairs.
And so
Sorry, it took me a second.
So,
I went security computer screen. I didn't spend it all out, it's been a long day.
Yeah, he's coming up the stairs.
And this tracker's
But there's been changes from the one that was up there to that one, that's the most current one, so.
The one in the email?
The one in the email is the most current,
Okay,
right?
all right.
They were concerned about you, Alonzo, they said you're never late.
I just checked my
But you're
GPS.
still not late.
See, he's never late, I told you.
Perfect timing.
Did you run?
Right on time.
you're like the human event horizon today.
Thank you. Everybody ready?
Yeah, sir.
All right, well, thank you all for coming to the March 24th work session. Rise and say the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, well, we'll just get right into the committee reports. Clark, you're up first, sir.
Okay, we had our first public safety committee meeting on March 4th. Chosen because that is the only day of the year that's a command, March 4th. Councilor Mark Kramer was elected secretary by unanimous vote. We read the mayor's charges. Finance Director Piper presented an overview of the public safety fee. The committee voted unanimously to recommend a 3% fee increase to the Budget Committee in order to maintain the level of excellent service we received from the Lane County Sheriff Office. We reviewed the city municipal code regarding fireworks, and we decided against recommending any revisions to it. We began planning for this year's National Night Out, which will occur on Thursday, August 7th, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at Holt Park. Sergeant Speldrich will contact most of the regular attendees to see if they can make it. A couple other of us have other people to contact. Interim City Manager Nebel will see what problems we might have from previous years in storage at City Hall or anywhere around town. Our crowd favorites from last year should be returning, as well as the most popular events, which is a bit of a teaser, so stay tuned.
Is that it?
That is it for the Public Safety Committee. The other one will be longer.
You got, let me know if you need help with the music,
Oh, yes,
so I
please.
can get it back. Awesome.
And logging first aid kits.
What's that?
Did you bring the, or provide the logging first aid kits
Yeah.
last year?
Did I give
I'd like
that?
to talk to you about that.
Yeah, that and then ODF and W. I can call them again, try and see if we can get another brave soul to come down in Smoky in middle of August. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right.
Good question, did you say August 7th?
August 7th.
Thank you, I just want to confirm.
All right. Any other questions? All right, we'll go to number B, Transportation and Public Works Committee.
Who is that?
Public Works Committee?
Transportation and Public Works Committee. I don't know.
I don't think they've met. Who is the,
It was on here.
who is the chair? Yeah, we asked, if you didn't have a report, to let us know, and
Okay.
they didn't let us
We're
know.
gonna move on from that one then. Simple.
Who is the chair of that?
Well, I thought the Public Works and Water rate was Stacy.
Are these different committees?
This is why the Transportation and Public Works threw me off, because
Yeah,
that's separate.
Yeah, I honestly don't know, because they seem to work together, and maybe Jim,
I believe they're separate committees, right?
The water rate
The
committee
water
has
rate
citizens on it.
advisory,
Yeah, it does have citizens on it. But I believe the Public Works is just the counselors without the citizens.
Have we not,
I think the Water Rate Advisory is like a
Yes,
they're two different.
subcommittee of that.
Yeah. Well,
have we not
I thought we've already,
appointed, who did we appoint to that?
It'd be the same three council members that were on the water rate advisory within the.
you, Kramer, and Castillo.
Okay, then we do not have a report.
Okay.
I'm a little confused about sorry. A little confused
It
about
was
the
admin
naming
and
here.
finance.
We can figure it out later.
And then you were administrator, Public Works and transportation, and public safety was Clark.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so no
A little
meeting.
confused about that. We'll
We'll get it cleaned up for next time.
yeah.
Parks and Tree, Alan.
Yeah, I went to a meeting at Tuesday, March 11th, and they did talk about, they put bat houses up in the parks, so they was able to get those at a decent cost. And then the city was gonna put those up in the parks. We talked about some of the new budgets that they're gonna try to come up with this year. Pretty much gonna be the same as it was last year. And so they're not gonna go very much higher on that. They were talking about new signs for Arbor Day. They wanna put up a new sign, so it does the they got a pollinator park over there, or garden. And so they're wanting to put that up there to see what the species are that are native to Oregon and this area. And same with the insects and the birds and things like that. So they're gonna have that sign put up for Arbor Day. They also want to talk about, in the future, they're talking about putting up some kind of a bridge or something to go across that path out there, and trying to get that so it's a full circle and be able to go all the way through. So that's gonna be something we'll probably be talking about in the next few months, I would imagine. And that's pretty much it for me for this
Yeah.
minute.
I think the only other thing would be Arbor Day, which is April.
Because that was what I was gonna ask.
Or the-
26.
26.
26th, it's
Yes.
Saturday.
Okay.
From, I believe it's from 10 till
10
1
to 1.
o'clock.
Thank you, sorry about that.
Otherwise, I remember it exactly the same way as you just said.
All right.
That's all from me.
Thanks, Alan. Nice job for your first report. Well done, sir. Next is the Airport Commission.
I have no report tonight,
No
Mayor.
report, all right. And the final one would be Lane Act. Clark?
Yes, we met on March 12th, and some of the highlights, the Lane Act members gave a bunch of reports, and I shared about our most recent city council meeting where we approved that ordinance to add the I-5 traffic signal and crossings on A Street as part of our transportation system plan in Creswell. And I shared how passionate citizens were that were here in advocating for a traffic signal, which, I was delighted to see. I live in an engaged community. The vice chair of Lane Act for this session, or this, year, is Jameson Auden, the LTD CEO and general manager. He shared the news that the LTD agreed to sell the Hunsaker property along River Road to the YMCA. So they'll build right next to the Santa Clara station there, where LTD had some surplus property that they weren't using. So that's an agreement, and we'll see where it goes from there. There was a special report from ODOT Finance and Budget Division Administrator Jeff Flowers. He spoke about the impact of the recent federal executive orders. Basically, all new grants are on hold at this time and until further notice. Even existing projects that they wanted to amend, they can't amend at this time. Everything's just kind of frozen. There was one thing particular that affected Lane County, which is a multi-million-dollar PROTECT grant. There were two of them granted in Oregon, the other one to Lincoln City, Tillamook area. And PROTECT stands for Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation.
That's a long one.
Yeah, they really had to work at that. Now you know where your tax dollars are
Yeah,
going.
way to make it fit.
So that's basically grants for transportation efficiency, especially weather-related vulnerabilities. So they were hoping to use this money to design and build improvements to transportation system in case of weather or related vulnerabilities or emergencies. Focus would be on Eugene, Springfield, and Coburg. But there was a gentleman there who was Chief Doug Barrett of the Confederated Tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians. He mentioned a thing where sometimes when the water gets high, there's no way for anybody to get out to Eugene, well, they said Eugene, but Springfield to the hospital there, now that Eugene no longer has a hospital. Which also got me thinking about, we talk about the Cascadia subduction zone and, if, what happens if the bridges collapse, one or more. So that would have helped with that sort of thing. It's not necessarily dead, it's just, in a state of limbo at the time. So that was his report. And then there was one final report from Jenna Berman, the active transportation liaison. And active transportation refers to pedestrian, bicycle, and public transportation. It's basically a very neat overview of stuff that they had already done in the past. But one moment of interest for me and all of us, and I bet our citizens, was that she had mentioned that cyclists and pedestrians, especially pedestrians that are blind or have low vision, often experience problems with roundabouts. And for the blind and low vision, I think a lot of it has to do with the circular flow of the traffic. And it was just a very interesting thing. So I'm hoping that romance with the roundabouts is ended.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Interesting, I never thought of it that way for people with vision, impaired vision, that's interesting. Awesome.
That's it.
Awesome, thank you, sir. Move on to presentations. Santa Pac, Aaron and Chris,
I think Aaron is remotely
remote, okay.
trying in because he was feeling under the weather and he didn't want to share.
Oh, come on. It's going around, everybody's got it, yeah, don't be selfish, Aaron. Awesome. Well, Chris, if you want to take her away.
Yeah, just make a quick introduction for myself. There's been a change at Santa Pac. I'm the interim district manager since 2 weeks ago. Been in the industry for 28 years. I live in Junction City. I help out with the division, but I'll be focused on Santa Pac over the next few months until we can backfill that role. Aaron, you probably all know Aaron, been around for a long time, so I'll hand it over to him for our presentation.
I think you're muted, Darren.
Nope.
Thank you.
Okay, let me see.
Are we muted?
One more thing.
I think he's working.
Conference PC,
working through
there we
that,
go.
so.
Sorry about that, Aaron. Just one
Oh,
more.
and you can,
There he is. Yeah.
oh, okay, great. Okay, well, thanks everybody for letting me tune in virtually. Okay, so I feel like I'm really loud. I'm gonna try and turn myself down. Okay, so I'm at Diane in the pack. I've been with Santa Pac for 18 years, and live in Creswell, actually. I'm just right across town right now, but I'm not feeling good, so I'm going to get back today. Today we're coming in and talking to the city about every year we come in to look at our rates and to potentially have a rate adjustment. Our contractor allows for a direct pass-through onto the rates of the consumer price index for the last year. As long as it's not above 5%. And if it's above 5%, then we need to come in and work in good faith together to see if we need to receive a rate increase over 5%. The good news is this last year, the CPI was 2.6%. So the CPI metric that we use is the Western BC. It's smaller level cities in the Western United States. And 2.6% is is really good science. It's historically been a lot higher than that. So that's what we're proposing tonight. Just remember it's as well in your packet. And then I usually like to say the most common service that people have is a 35-gallon trash cart picked up once per week. And so the impact to those customers will be 65 cents per month onto their monthly trash bill. So we're going from $25.95 to $26.60 a month. And that full-day schedule is attached. I'm happy to walk through any questions you might have on the rates as well. And Saddleback's, proud to be a part of the Creswell community, and we support our local nonprofits, community events. We have our community cleanup event coming on May 3rd. So people can bring, it's the public works here all day on Highway 99. People can bring materials if that's on that Saturday. Actually, the public works department staff runs it, and then we usually provide pizza and drinks and stuff for them, and then all the material that's been brought. We also participated a lot in different events. So I had some pictures here of National Night Out, and we did like that every year for our holiday party campaigns, and we were able to donate 26 bikes this year to the Creswell Youth Nursery. We do both dry cans donations, Creswell Clubhouse sponsor, and some other donations, including Creswell First. I'm getting more involved with Creswell First as well, so I'm excited to do that too. Unless someone has any questions on that, I'm happy to discuss the 2.6%. But I can also discuss a bit about the future of recycling in Oregon with Oregon's Recycling Modernization Act.
Councilors, any questions?
Straightforward.
Nobody has any questions for you, Aaron?
Very good. Thanks, Mr. Smith. Okay, so Oregon has what's called the Recycling Modernization Act that was passed a couple years ago, and since then we've been working on it with the City of Oregon, and it will become effective July 1st this year. And essentially what it's doing is it's requiring the companies that manufacture the packaging or the plastics that we'll get with all of our items to essentially pay for and subsidize the recycling system. It was in reaction to when China shut down America's recycling in 2017 due to contamination. And so Oregon was looking for a longer-term solution to make sure they didn't have a recycling crisis again. And so lots of states are starting to do this, but Oregon was sort of a pioneer. Oregon was one of the first states to actually enact it. And so what this means for Creswell is they're given a priority, cities are given a different priority level based on what existing infrastructure they have right now for recycling. And it goes from E to F, and Creswell is an F. Because Creswell has full commingled recycling collection for residents and businesses, and we have basically a full suite of recycling. But residents will be able to take advantage of similar items to be able to place in their recycle parts. So the list itself is expanding, which is good. And then there's some potential funding that the PRO, which is the Producer Responsibility Organization, the manufacturers themselves, will be funding for education to Creswell residents that will be able to distribute recycling education to reduce contamination. So I think Chris is meeting with Spencer Wednesday to go over a funding allocation form, which allows the City of Creswell to designate Saddleback to receive the funding to distribute the education. And so we can potentially come back and present more on that. That's kind of the status of where it's at right now. And I don't expect a lot of huge changes in the near term for Creswell. They're going to be focusing primarily on cities like Eastern Oregon that may have no recycling whatsoever, no infrastructure at all, and get those up to speed first. But ultimately, what the goal is to subsidize the cost of recycling. So when we collect recycling at the curb, we have to take it to a processor, and they charge us per ton to accept it, and it's supposed to subsidize that cost. And so we don't know exactly the specifics of that, but we should be in the next year, have a better understanding of that, and be able to come back to the city and say, okay, here's what we're subsidizing, and here's the savings that we've realized due to the IMA. Any questions about the Recycling Modernization Act? I'm sorry, I know I'm going to do that pretty fast. I'd be happy to come back in person and kind of get a deeper dive overview. My members of revenue, city councils there as well. And I'd be happy to also give a tour of Santa Pac, our operations in Glenwood. We also have a recycling facility called EcoSort, Glenwood as well, which recycles construction materials. And so I have to do that anytime we can schedule something that I think would be a good, potentially a good education piece and outreach piece.
Councilor Holt?
Who funds that program? You're saying that the manufacturers themselves will?
Yes, yeah, they're supposed to contribute to a fund based on their revenue, their sales in the state of Maryland.
So it comes out of their revenue, so we don't risk any of that cost being worked into the cost of, say, getting my garbage picked up?
It shouldn't go into the cost of getting your garbage picked up for Creswell, because we don't need to implement any new infrastructure to do this, but there's been some debate over, whether manufacturers will pass along these additional costs into goods themselves that people purchase.
It's not debatable, really. This is just my opinion, but that's not really debatable. It always gets passed along.
That's been my experience as well.
So would you say effectively then Oregon's put together a program that basically forces everybody else to educate us? Or encourages everyone to educate us? Is that the way?
Yes.
Okay.
It is mandatory on the producers. If you sell goods in Oregon, you're going to have to contribute to this fund. The goods that have packaging material, that fund then goes to education and subsidized new recycling markets.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Just a comment here, Aaron. I'm looking forward to hearing more information on the subsidizing of this program.
Sure, yeah, as well. We don't have good numbers yet. There's a few things in the county that are open right now as well. So as I'm sure that we talked about previously, Lane County's proposed clean room facility, which was previously called IMF. So that's still essentially, well, it was approved by Lane County Commissioners to move forward, but now they have a land permit that was appealed by Santa Pac and others, and we're waiting for the appeals court on that.
Thanks for appealing that.
Yeah, thank you. I support you.
I support that.
One of the things we've been doing is we've been able to take advantage of our parent company, Waste Connections, we own a landfill and called Dry Creek Landfill. And we're able to transport the waste there and stabilize the rates for the ratepayers. So that's what we've been doing for Creswell since the fall, my understanding.
But I appreciate it. Thank you, Aaron. Anyone else? No other questions, my man. I hope you feel better.
Okay, thank you, and I hope to see you guys soon.
Thank you, sir.
All right, take care.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Introduce yourself. Spencer will show you around at a real good time on Wednesday. Next, we have the Oregon Disaster Airlift Response Team. Jim, ready to present.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Thanks for having us. Don't want to go back and repeat everything that's in your packet, so hopefully I'll just hit the high spots. Essentially, we're an organization called ODART, Oregon Disaster Airlift Response Team, been around for a couple of years and gradually growing. I remember it basically had its origins in this room, believe it or not. 2016, there was the council pulled together a community group to do a visioning process for the airport, its airport. And the outcome of that process was basically a vision for the airport and how it's connected to the city. It had three basic components. One was, the airport is a physical asset of the city, and that involves a lot of capital improvements, maintenance of the physical facilities, and mostly funded, largely funded by federal dollars over the years. And that's been very successful. We've got a new runway, we've got runway lighting, we've got instrument approach, and all that all came from that initial initiative then. Second big piece of the vision was to demonstrate, the airport needed to demonstrate its value to the community. And one of the flagship of that particular piece of it was, the idea of having a STEM program with the school district where, we can partner with, the airport can partner with the community to create value. And then the third piece was recognizing the particular location and circumstances of where the airport's located, its elevation and such. It was seen to be a really good site for a disaster response. And like I say, that was 9 years ago. I started working with the Airport Commission. I was Airport Commissioner for 8 years after that. Started ODART as essentially was the inspiration, came from the airport visioning process. So ODART is now a statewide organization. It's a 501c3 not-for-profit, and it's got 4 basic locations, but Creswell is one of those. We tried to select airports that were near large airports where federal resources were likely to be flown in on large, military transport aircraft, and so one of those was Eugene. So we thought, well, we wanted to pick a place that met a couple of criteria. One was, location, survivability, basically, an active airport or aviation community, which this certainly is, facilities that would be available. And so Creswell checked all those boxes. Community support, we need only point to the visioning process and the very strategic plans that have been developed just to show that we had community support. So the state came around with a grant program that was like $10 million, and they had wanted to target organizations to improve the resiliency of the state. And they were looking at communities that might be considered islands or cut off in the event of a disaster. This was a year ago, they opened it up, and we applied, as did the city of Creswell. So we had two, compete both. I guess they turned out to be competing, but we thought were compatible. We were actually working together to create our applications. They had 700 applications for the $10 million. They were able to approve 100 of those. And so ODART was awarded one of those, and Creswell was not. So now we're in this situation where, we're making good on our partnership where, we'll find a way of working together and to benefit the citizens of Creswell, and as well as, the larger region. So Creswell Airport had a project that it was put in the capital plan. It was basically, it had its own Connex box. It wanted to store some equipment there, wanted to site it somewhere, and so it was, and I believe it was grant funded as well.
Correct.
So the idea was that, well, the state had some site requirements. They needed gravel surface, couldn't be bare earth, and it needed to be serviced by electricity. So because the grant is actually for 3 Connex boxes. So the site would have to accommodate in total 4 Connex boxes, including the cities, and it would have to be temperature controlled internally to keep the supplies fresh. And there's fuel, generators, food, water, shelter, a lot of different types of equipment that would go in there. So there was some electricity requirements, and there were some requirements for the ground. So we thought, initially, we'd have this three-way agreement, because I think that it worked at the city of Newport, from what I understand, between the state, the city, and the organization. And we got a hard no on that. Apparently, they had run into some problems with those type of agreements. So the way the state.
It wasn't my fault, so.
Oh, I know. I don't know what the problems were, but I know they were a hard no on that. So the idea now is that ODART would have a MOU with the city that would outline the duties and responsibilities of each, and Creswell would be primarily responsible for site development for these Connex boxes, and ODART would be responsible for utilities and maintenance and things of that nature. Also, the replenishment were any of those supplies to be used. Creswell would have first dibs on the contents of the boxes. In other words, you'd have right of first refusal. If we got called out to Newport to replenish their Connex boxes, then we'd have to get a sign off from the city to do that. In general, we would, like say, replenish the supplies that were pulled out of those boxes in an actual event. What else? What am I forgetting? Okay, that's pretty much it, I think.
So you're saying that the city of Creswell would be responsible for keeping the boxes replenished?
No,
Full?
ODART would be.
ODART would?
Yeah.
Okay, I think you
Yeah.
had a little.
Yeah, the city's primary responsibility would to be improve the site such that we can locate the boxes there, and then to make electricity service available to those boxes.
And do we know what site improvement looks like? I mean, like overall? Mhm.
Yeah, we've got a little
okay.
diagram back there, but essentially it's been scoped out. I believe it's been costed out.
Just, yeah,
I'm
high
getting out of my
level.
depth here, so I get the expert.
Thank you, Council. So it's a win-win for both the citizens of Creswell, the local areas, ODART, in the fact that we would have emergency essential equipment on the ground, should that happen. We've been working, it's been part of my task the last 10 years since we started doing the strategic plan to create the EOC on the airport so that it would be available should a need arise, that we either fly emergency equipment out, emergency supplies in. To that end, we've been very lucky in getting grants to do that. So we're a few steps ahead of some of the people that are facing this resiliency grant. On the screen there is the diagram that we've created after working with the Oregon Department, the ODHS group. I do have a grant currently for the one Connex container that will house the runway crosses and the balloon lights, things like that. So we'll try and coincide with those. So some of the footwork was already done. I went out between Joel and myself, we've received 3 bids for that area to be prepped for the site. I did talk to Rick Hudson today, and so they are hoping, once we have approval, if you guys are so willing, that we will start getting this prepped and ready, hopefully to have the containers placed in May. They're in a time crunch because they have to expend the money by June 30th. But some of that, so the cost is between.
That's what I was looking for.
So the groundwork, we have bids running between $22,000 and just under $25,000. Electrical is $3,400, and I'm missing one, and I can't remember.
Excuse me.
I don't remember what the other. It's going to be about 30. We're thinking under 40,000.
So the way Jim is structuring the budget adjustment is giving us a contingency of approximately $10,000. Just in case we run into something that we don't expect. We will have to do electrical permits, things like that, but.
And that's what I was asking when I was like, kind of the overall picture, like,
Right.
I've looked at the documentation, but overall, what does that mean for the city of Creswell? One thing that I've continued to ask every year, I think, since I've been on budget committee, before I was on council, is the airport self-sufficient?
It does take funds from the general fund in a couple of different ways. The majority, when we do grants that are from the general fund, for example, the resiliency grants, all of the grants that I get are aviation-based, so the money has to be transferred in, but yet we still do not. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, it's because I asked a few years ago, and I was assured that we're working towards self-sufficiency, but then we keep doing these projects, and so I want to know how we're getting there.
Yeah, so this project is at the airport, but it's a public safety function, so it's actually gonna be a budget adjustment in the general fund. And it's a one-time cost, it's not like a continuing operating cost. So we do have to prep the site in order for the containers to be allowed to be placed there. But that's one-time expense, we're done. This isn't an ongoing operation.
So how are we doing getting the airport to self-sufficiency?
We're working on the big part is we need to have more hangars,
That's,
which is what we have figured out through our visioning process. We don't have enough hangars. The majority, we have bought 5 of them in the last several years from the general fund. We take a loan and then pay the loan back. But we need hangars that we own, that we can rent out. It just makes more dollars and cents for us to come up with that type of infrastructure. So
Is the
we've
committee
been,
working on that?
we've got 3 core grants. This is where NIMS, do you remember NIMS, the acronym?
Kind of, yes.
For National Fisheries, Marine Fisheries Services,
Oh, yeah,
that has stopped us from going. We would have had our taxi lanes built 2 years ago.
that's right.
So hopefully we'll be breaking ground in June or July this year. We've got almost everything in place now. Once we get that done, so we've got 3 core grants for the North Taxi Lane. 2 bill, so bipartisan infrastructure law. We have 2 of those grants that we've received from the federal government that are gonna go to the construction of the taxi lanes, and then we have 3 more bill grants that we're gonna utilize to start the build on hangar construction.
Okay.
So once we get that area completely built with 2 rows of T hangars and rows of squares, it will, I pretty much can guarantee that it will bring the airport to self-sufficiency.
They're at least closer, yeah. 'Cause,
It will
I mean,
be very close, if not over.
Okay.
What's like 5 hangars, 10 hangars? Make it easy.
The first 2 rows are 11,
Okay,
and the last one is boxes, so more for the corporate, so they're squares.
okay.
So there's 7, I believe, on the last row.
If we get
So
that 18, we'll
Right.
be self-sufficient, and we're close.
we're close.
And Jim also had mentioned that we have to have temperature control, so we're paying for the utilities
I believe.
on a monthly basis, so that would be the only thing we would incur, is say electricity to the,
I think that's going to be a discussion with the MOU. I know the state has also been looking at how can they support these smaller resiliency hubs.
yeah.
Whether it be utilities, whether it be replacing the supplies if they're used. So they're looking at different pieces and parts, and we'll go through that as we do the MOU.
Okay.
And I don't know that that's been a permanent discussion, whether or not it would be their responsibility or our responsibility.
I assume the construction is prevailing wage, so we're paying extra, double?
It's not,
No,
it's,
because if you're under 50,000, it's not prevailing wage.
Okay.
no.
So-
I think it has to be,
So you have more of a choice with your contractors, electrical and utility and groundwork, and so we can get a little bit more creative there, so you can take suggestions and,
yes.
Okay.
And I try and use local.
okay.
How many hangars does the city own now?
We own all of them, but we don't have the use of any of the privately built. We did buy 5 hangars in the past. I think our first one, which is the STEM building, it's getting close to 10 years. We bought 5 other T hangars. We own the open T hangars in the buyout, Creswell Airport Inc. There's 3 rows of T hangars. Creswell Airport Inc., as part of the buyout, they receive all the revenues for 32 years. So there's 3 rows of open T hangars that the city does not see any revenue from. And it's built that way. We have 7 more years on that.
In general, the city owns the land, and then the user owns the building.
Technically.
It's the way much of the airport is working. So the user pays the city in lieu
Land
taxes for, pays for a lease agreement on the land. And that's for most of the types of situations. But then there are some hangars that are owned by the city. The buildings are owned by the city, and those are rented out at market rates then to the other users.
So we do have 1 row of B, hangar B, which is slated to be torn down at some time in the future. They're in okay shape, but they're not worth putting money into refurbish them. But we can't do that until we have more hangars on the field.
Okay.
So, yes.
Lots of details, I'm sorry I asked.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Yeah, just for the council's interest, coming up on April 14th, there's going to be 2 items on the agenda that will deal with this. One is the budget amendment. And so once the funds are appropriated, then if they are appropriated at that point, we can go forward with the ground improvements that are necessary. And secondly, are we planning to have the agreement with ODART by
That is my
time?
hope, to have the MOU
Okay.
ready.
So those would be the 2 things that the council would consider at the April 14th meeting. So this is kind of your introduction to the issues.
Anyone else got any questions?
Do we have the proper safety stuff, equipment out there if there was a fire in any of those connexes?
We have fire extinguishers all over, and they're installed with, they will have fire extinguishers. They're metal, I'm not sure what would burn, maybe some of the contents, but.
Probably the most volatile thing out there would be the fuel.
The
Yeah.
the propane tank. But we rely on South Lane Rural Fire Department.
It's no external fire suppression, just
No.
simple fire extinguishers? Okay. Perfect. Anyone else?
They're metal, they're not gonna burn.
No. They'll melt, they'll bend.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not
that.
that, it's the stuff inside.
Thank you, Shelley.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
You bet.
Head right into our discussion items. 2025-02 Jesse Long annexation. Mr. Curtis Thomas, if you would, sir.
So I've been working here for about 4 years now, and I had 1 annexation in my first 3.5, and now I've had 3 in 3 months.
So it's getting repetitive.
So
Getting good at it, aren't you?
you bet, we all are.
Versus bubble, no.
So in front of you is a type 4 legislative annexation decision. The applicant, Jesse Long, is requesting to annex in 0.9 acres into city limits. And so the main criteria is that the property is within the urban growth boundary, which it is. Is it contiguous to city limits? And it is contiguous on all 4 sides. So this would kind of complete a nice donut hole. And then are urban services available? And there's water and sewer available in Kings Row and on 10th Street, and there's road access way there. I think the stormwater is in 10th. I'd have to look into the Public Works report on it too, but pretty straightforward as far as annexations go. And so the applicant is wishing to rezone it to low density residential, which is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. I have not talked to the applicant about this, but when Kings Row is built out, it's going to require an exaction of 30 feet of this property. So they're going to lose approximately 9,000 to 10,000 square feet. And so, again, I haven't discussed it with them, but I
am curious if they can still make their project pencil out with low-density residential zoning. A benefit of going to medium-density residential is the minimum lot size goes from 5,000 square feet to 3,000 square feet. But at this time, the applicant is proposing low-density residential.
But you haven't talked to him about that potential or that potential,
I've emailed his consultant, just because, yeah, we're doing the math and he's gonna lose 1 or 2 lots based on the right-of-way exaction. So it's for them to consider.
Okay.
And it really depends what he wants to develop. Because if the goal is to maximize lots, then your process is one way, and if your goal is to have, I don't know, a small apartment complex, then it doesn't really matter as much.
Has he given you an indication of what his plan is? Single-family homes or apartment building?
Most likely a small subdivision. So I would assume that that's single-family homes.
Does the road have to be punched through?
Yes, yeah.
Now, do we have sewer and stuff that's gonna be able to accommodate this now? I was reading later in on this, and it's discussing about,
Moratorium?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. We only have so much supply in our sewer system, and we have a pretty steady demand of projects right now, and it is kind of first come, first serve, and at this point, it looks like this project will be able to be completed, but it doesn't take much to use up our remaining supply.
Speaking to that, the connections or hookups, as we, and Cliff might be able to speak to this too, but as we move further and we progress and we improve, aren't we allowed more hookups? So as this may take up a handful and we improve, then wouldn't we have some more coming down the line, potentially?
Yeah, correct. Our MAO with DEQ outlines that.
Okay.
There's projects within that we have to knock off, and each one gives you a certain number.
Okay.
We're kind of on the hook for getting 10 more after we have this TVing work that we're in the middle of doing right now.
Okay.
Some of those projects are more substantial than others. So to get the full benefit, I think there's maybe 60 more to get. We may not be getting all of those, in the near future, but there is opportunity for a few more as we go.
How many do we have now?
We qualified for 30, and I believe 7 of them are used. I think we have 23 left.
And we'll get 10 more pretty soon.
After we're done with this TV work and we submit to DEQ that report.
So it'll take a while.
We're probably 6 months out or so.
Yeah, okay.
So, which this won't be done in 6 months, but that has to be approved, obviously, before they put a shovel in the ground, I assume.
Correct.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Thanks, Curtis. Don't go anywhere.
Next.
House Bill 4064 and House Bill 3395 Development Code Amendment.
Okay. So this is another type 4 decision, and Planning Commission worked on this for a long time too, and so they recommended last week 6-0 unanimous approval. And this is for a development code update to be in compliant with 2 House bills. And in summary, the House bills change our code to put single-family houses, duplexes, manufactured houses, prefabricated houses under the same review umbrella. And the idea is to just make it easier to provide housing. The other component to this update is to allow prefabricated homes in manufactured dwelling parks. Right now, only manufactured homes are allowed. Prefab homes and manufactured dwellings are, I think, they're not quite a square and a rectangle. I think they're more like a Venn diagram. I'm not exactly sure, but that's one of the updates. And another update is to reduce the parking for duplexes. That's the one requirement that can be more strenuous than single-family homes. Strenuous isn't really the right word, but and the minimum The maximum minimum parking requirement is 1 space per unit, so 2 spaces per duplex, and so that's what Planning Commission proposed. And then also here, we have our DLCD State Rep Patrick Wingard, so I'm happy to field any questions, but if the questions get really specific, I might kick them to our state partner. And then also within the changes are some definitions that are cleared up, just to kind of differentiate manufactured home, mobile home, RV trailer, prefab home, and it just kind of cleans it up, makes it more consistent. And it also, it reduces like the risk of me making a mistake down the road or a future planner making a mistake down the road, because we don't want to have a code that is not in compliance with state rule. So, any questions? Joan?
I just need clarification. I keep reading this over and over, and it sounds as though in any vacant lot, any type of a housing unit can be input, as long as there are hookups.
Correct.
And the lot is the right. So, so someone on St. Andrews Loop, if there was a vacant lot, someone could buy it and put a fifth wheel on it.
Not exactly. I believe that property's in the HOA too, so that's not something that the city enforces, but that would impact that property. So if it's like a manufactured home or mobile home or meets that definition, that is a permanent, well, it's hooked onto the ground, then that would be allowed in the St. Andrews Loop neighborhood, but a fifth wheel on wheels, that's a different type of criteria.
Well, yeah, I'm just,
Yeah, the Oregon
yeah.
state law also said that it has to have a foundation, in the ground
Right.
foundation on
Right.
top of that with no wheels.
Yeah, but their heads would explode, I'm just saying.
Fair question.
Well, you said they voted 6-0 on this one?
Correct.
Anyone else got any questions?
It looks like we're lowering the square footage of the lot requirements for duplexes.
Correct.
Is there a reason for that?
It's just to put duplexes through the same review criteria as a single-family home. So if a single-family home lot is 5,000, then the duplex lot is also 5,000. And you can see in we talked about this at Planning Commission too, that the medium and high-density lots are 3,000 square feet. And a duplex on a 3,000 square foot lot would be pretty tight. And so maybe that's, yeah, I think developers could be creative. You could go one on top of the other. I'm not really sure, but.
Which is really ugly and avoidable if we stuck with the original sizes.
Yeah, we kind of chatted about looking at lot sizes again. I mean, that could be a good project because we have density requirements, we have lot size requirements, and they don't always, they can conflict sometimes, and that puts staff at an awkward position too, because we're trying to like, well, this criteria seems to fit clearly, but this one is a little off.
My feeling with both these house bills is that the state is putting pressure on you guys to get more housing, that Ms. Kotek is behind this pushing. Because if you go down First Street and you take a ride just up that hill, there's like 4 little houses on a lot that generally maybe have one, and it's awkward, it's weird, it's random, it doesn't make sense. I get the impression that we're getting bamboozled into doing this under the pretext of it's just formality of just making sure everybody's even and on fair playing field, but I'm reading this, I'm not getting that. So I'm kind of surprised the Planning Commission was a 6-0 vote on that. Are you getting that impression?
They, there's, I think, mixed personal feelings amongst Planning Commission as to whether or not it's right that the state tells us what to do when we're kind of Creswell humming along doing our own thing. But I don't think it's really planning commission's role to push back on the state when they're recommending an update, because they're all just people volunteering.
You say that
That's our
the state
job,
is
right? That's pretty much our
recommending,
job.
you're
Yeah.
saying the state is recommending an update?
They're requiring.
They're requiring
State
it,
law.
the planning commission is
Correct.
recommending, okay.
So there's a number of things.
I knew, I misunderstood.
So we can't
where that
say
came
no?
in.
You can say no, but the law
I
still
mean, I don't know
applies.
why we're talking about it if we can't really say no.
Yeah, it's the procedure.
Yeah, the key is making sure the city code is not conflicting with state law, because that's when you'll get into some legal problems. If we permit something that's not, if we're doing something that's against state law, then that's gonna create problems for the developer, that's gonna create problems for the city. And so you gotta have, whether you like it or not, sort of scenario.
Oh, I don't like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
But-
yes
but-
and no, we are a
but this-
home rule city.
Yeah, they're just trying to comply with Oregon state law, and actually, I thought that's pretty good, it's, I'll say good news, but they're voted 6-0, which means, you know, at least they're on agreeing on what they've done.
Well, like Curtis said, it's not their job to stop it, it's their
Yeah,
job
they're
to create
they're
good
just trying to
ideas and
comply
try.
with the Oregon state law.
Well, I'm against it, but
Did the
I'll,
Oregon state law require us to lower the duplex lot size?
Yes.
You should double it, or not double it, but at least add some to it.
Put two
I've
two
seen-
duplexes on it.
I've seen duplexes in the same size as a one house, and it's just, yeah.
It's-
It-
Town-
Yeah.
Well, and
townhouse.
essentially, you could
Tiny
end up with an
okay.
apartment complex next to your home that you buy, right? I mean, this is what we're creating by doing
That is
this.
the concern.
Yeah,
That or, yeah, one of those small homes.
uh-huh,
Tiny home?
Yeah, tiny home.
which doesn't help property values.
No.
At all.
Well, that's kind of the thread that's going through this whole thing, but I think the impetus for this was to increase the supply of housing and make it, some of it more affordable.
But-
Correct,
That's
and-
where she's coming from.
And that's the problem, is it's not making it more affordable, it's just gonna make it where someone that owns a bunch of property, they're gonna make a bunch of duplexes, and they're gonna double rent on that piece of property.
Every regulation just makes it harder and harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, unintended consequences.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, just give us our tax dollars back and we'll privately create our own homes.
Yeah.
Right?
Pretty simple.
So, I mean, I appreciate that what your group has done and appreciate that that you guys worked on it for a while, and we're not discounting the decision they made. It's just, it's hard to swallow this.
I understand.
Yeah.
And just because we don't agree doesn't mean we can't work together, so. Anyone else got any? Mark?
Is there anything that we could do to help influence not having big apartment complexes? Maybe say, hey, look,
There's a difference between big apartment complexes and duplexes. So the laws don't require big multiplexes going into single-family or low-density code. And so again, you know, but it does allow the duplexes now statewide to go into single-family zoning.
It also allows the cottage style, which is just as bad.
Yeah, we've had, I can tell you, we've had some nice cottage-style developments in Newport, and they've been really kind of a plus to the community in providing people, teachers and others, places they can afford to live, so.
Salem has nice ones too.
Yeah, so I think the cottage thing can really be an asset to the community.
If it's done right, yeah.
Yep.
just looking at trying to increase that neighborhood. I mean, you're putting something in there, you don't want to devalue those guys.
That's exactly right, and that's
Well,
kind of
that's what'll
where I'm
happen.
at. And also, our commitment to the small town atmosphere. You start opening up this kind of housing, and that goes away.
And I guess I'll just say that it does seem like developers in Creswell are still building single-family houses kind of regardless of what the code provides option to. So like the city does not build housing. We just kind of have rules that we follow. And that's something I try to keep reminding myself too.
Yep. What happens if we, as a council, vote no?
Your ordinance is going to not be compliant with state law. and
So
it's
if we
gonna
voted
create-
no, it's just a lawsuit's waiting to
gonna-
happen, that's,
It could be a lawsuit against the developer or someone that you allow to do something that gets stopped because it's against state laws. So unfortunately, there's not really any good things other than working with legislators to change the law at the state level. But it's just
They
going
don't
to create.
listen.
I don't have enough
confusion,
money to
so.
donate to get them to listen.
They don't listen to us.
And I thought while we have Patrick here from DLCD, maybe he could provide a little like background on the House bills or.
Yep, please,
yeah.
please do.
Sure,
Chat for
any more
relief.
information you have is great.
We won't throw anything.
Oh, Mayor Smith, members of the Creswell City Council, I got tough skin, man. No, I mean, your concerns are valid. Nobody wants to see small towns turned into apartment complexes. So what I would offer to you is your vast majority of residential zoning is low-density residential. You don't allow apartment complexes in that zone. You may, over time, like Curtis was mentioning that the annexation, like maybe there's value or reason to go into a higher zone. But let me say this. This is all about putting property rights back to your properties. I mean, this is about giving flexibility back to your property owners. We, as zoning administrators in the 1950s, 1960s, we thought, boy, we know what's best for everybody. We're going to do single-family suburban-style lots, and that's going to be the predominant American way of developing. It's expensive. It's expensive to maintain that style of development. The roads, the extension of utility infrastructure. So you're right, Mayor Smith. This is absolutely the governor and directing state agencies like ours, Department of Land Conservation Development. And I'm Patrick Wingard. I'm your regional representative out of the Springfield office. It is a tough pill to swallow when the state or somebody, comes to you under your home rule charter and says you need to do this, you need to do that. But I'll break it down for you in like 3 ways. So your hands are tied on the duplex issue. That House bill passed a couple of years ago. Any city over 2,500 has to allow 2-family dwellings on any lot that allows a single-family dwelling. So that was the beginning of giving rights back to property owners. Because before zoning came into effect, largely in the 60s and 70s in our cities, you could build whatever you want. You could build mobile homes, and it's the way it should be. It should be. You're right. So the question or comment about the fifth wheel, that wouldn't work because it doesn't meet the thermal envelope of a single-family dwelling through the building code. So you have protections built in, but I would offer that the era of NIMBYism in Oregon is gone. Not in my backyard is an acronym that most of us in the planning world are familiar with, and a lot of citizens are as well. People don't like to hear that. Our HOAs are powerful. NIMBYism is powerful. The state has created an avenue requiring clear and objective standards for housing. So you all, with your planning commission's input, you should decide right here and now the type of housing that you want, what it should look like, the size of lots, and stop putting property owners through a discretionary conditional use, expensive, lengthy process. So at the heart, and we can agree to disagree on this, but at the heart, this is simplifying, streamlining, making housing more affordable, and making it easier for property owners to build housing. So I'll stop there and see what questions or comments you might have. And trust me, I'm here, representing the state, but at the heart, I'm a small city planner. I've worked in Oregon 20, 25 years. The North Coast up in Warrenton was where I spent a lot of my time. So you can, I have thick skin. So you won't hurt my feelings because, again, at heart, I'm a small city planner and I've served many mayors, many commissions and councils who feel similar to you all, that the state or others are usurping your authorities, and it's just not right, because you guys do a good job. You already have really good codes on the books, but let me know what I might be able to offer to you in regard to responses of your concerns or things that we can come back to the public hearing next month on and deliberate on. But I wanted to be here expecting y'all to have some concerns, and I wanted to support Curtis, your staff, because you've been great to work with us on this stuff. The last thing I will say is, so your hands are tied on the accessory dwelling units and the two-family dwelling duplex. You can say no to cottage clusters. Your challenge is you already allow them. So if you decide not to allow cottage clusters, you would, and your staff put a excerpt in your staff report on this, you have to notify every owner of a single-family dwelling lot in Creswell that you're removing that property right from them. You could do it, but those nasty grams, if you will, that come in people's mailboxes that tell them the city is proposing an action that will remove property rights from you, those don't go over very well. So you are in a tough spot. You really are politically. Where the state's telling you to do one thing, you really prefer to do it on your own. But on two of these three items, your hands are tied. The accessory dwelling units and the duplex item, your hands are tied. I mean, you could do nothing, and then Curtis is just gonna have to, your staff's just gonna have to know that you can allow certain things, like you can't impose requirements on manufactured dwellings like you previously had, or you have to allow prefabricated structures in your mobile home parks and things like that. Your staff would just have to know that, and that's fine. I mean, I've worked in those situations, it's kind of a pain, but, so, I mean, you could do nothing on these legislative asks. And then again, on the cottage cluster, since you already allow it, which is great in our perspective, to remove that property right, it would take some work, and I would offer to you that it will raise concerns. But, you know, that is your prerogative. Okay, now I'm gonna shut up.
I got a couple
Promise.
things for you. So the only thing you forgot about in the 50s and 60s and stuff is one parent work, one parent at home.
Yeah.
It's true, there's a big difference.
Yes, a big difference back then.
No doubt.
So do we have to still limit down to going downsize so they can put more in a smaller spot? So we have to go along with that as well. So going from 5,000 down to 3,000 for a duplex.
Yeah. So what your staff has done is normalized, which the state law requires the lot size between single-family dwellings and duplexes. They just have to be the same.
So we can go the other way.
You could. Right? Yeah, we wouldn't like it. Because we like, you know, and you've heard it from any land use planner in Oregon or elsewhere, you know, the efficient use of land and water resources. And I have a civil engineering background, so I'm sensitive to the cost of public works infrastructure and streets. And so when I see cities building 36-foot wide, 40-foot wide curb-to-curb streets, 8,000, 10,000 square foot lots, it creates a lot of stormwater, it creates a lot of responsibilities for cities to maintain that stuff. And we'd like to see smaller, more compact, if you will, cram them in there kind of development. I mean,
I'm sure you would.
you know, it's some people can put, you know, depending upon the color of your glasses, you know, rose-colored glasses, then these cottage clusters are fantastic.
Oh,
These garden apartments are marvelous. If you don't like anything but single-family dwellings, then, yeah, again, tough pill to swallow.
I'm sure the state likes them too because it's more revenue for the county taxes.
Residential development's a loser. Until you get to high-density residential, it's a loser.
When you talk about property rights, I don't feel like I'll ever have my property rights back until I'm done leasing my land. And that's how I feel about property taxes. Because if I don't pay my property tax, I don't get to keep my property. The state now owns it, right?
Yeah.
So until that property right comes back, it doesn't matter anything else. I mean, you call it giving our property rights back to us, is it?
Yeah, boy, that's above my pay grade. You got your finance director over there. We could talk about vacancy tax, you know, taxation structures, and, you know, equities or inequities there, but topic for another day, but you're right on point. I mean, absolutely, this stuff should be paying for itself.
Curtis, did you guys discuss at all reversing the square footage at all by, rather than lowering the duplex to match the single family, doing the other direction and having the duplex or raising the single family lot size? Was there any discussion? Okay.
You will, Counselor, be looking at a similar situation with the cottage clusters. If you chose to remove cottage clusters, you have to let property owners know under a statute that those property rights are being removed or restricted. I'm assuming, I haven't talked to Curtis about this, but having had his job in the past, that's something we don't want to often do if we don't have to, is send citywide notices alerting people that the city is doing something to affect their property rights, which may diminish. The notice also requires you to, across the top, make a phrase that the loss of the property rights may result in a loss in property values. So it's a pretty strong, I think your
Take
city
the
manager
cottage
is.
thing out of the conversation for a minute. I'm just talking about, rather than bringing the duplexes in line with single-family homes, couldn't we have done the opposite?
Yeah, I think you could. You've got some density requirements in your zoning code that you would probably have to address. But, Curtis, I'm more than happy to work with you to bring back to your councils something different. Because, yes, I think you could go that direction.
So if we remove the cottage clusters, we have to send out a letter? Because cottage clusters do not make sense for Creswell. I get it on the coast, it's a tourist town, people want a vacation home there or something like that, but not here. This is blue collar working home town. You might drive to work to Eugene, but you come home here to Creswell to be away from all that nonsense. And keep it small and know your neighbors. So cottage clusters, that's a joke. And I'll be happy to hand out those letters. I got thick skin too.
You would.
Anyone else?
That's good leadership, Mayor. Thank you.
On the, like, duplex and stuff like that, so, I've seen some in Eugene and stuff like that, so it's kind of one of the duplex comes in off an alley and the other one comes in off the street. It doesn't make sense to, and then they have no yards, period, because it's all driveway if they're both in the same driveway itself, if they're not coming in off an alley. So it's just, sometimes this really does not make sense to have a duplex in a small little area. They'll take like a block and they'll just put as many duplexes in as they can, and then you've got one driveway for 4 plexes. And it's almost like an alleyway as it is. That to me is nonsense, because it's not just one parcel of land, one use only. So it's more like putting a manufactured home park into just a few blocks, and then just making it really tight. And I live in a manufactured home park, so I'm not against this. It's just that in a new construction, why make it harder for the residential and all of that? I understand, but that's why I was wanting to know the lot size. Because that's my biggest thing is, yeah, I don't mind somebody that owns a piece of property, but they need to have the property in order for that to be put on.
Yeah, those are all great points. I will offer that we like alleyways because it retains a continuous curb cut along the frontage street, which lets more people park on the street.
Right.
Because we are getting to a point where the average American can't afford a backyard anymore, and the average American has to rely on city parks and streets that have sidewalks in order to get their kids, to touch earth and nature. Because you're not wrong. I mean, there's a big lawsuit going right now in Bend about the tree protection ordinance. A developer over there saying, "City, you can go pound sand, man. I can't meet affordable housing objectives and keep all these trees. You got to pick." And I think that's totally fair, and that's why you all get paid the big bucks.
Oh, yeah, huge.
So these are gonna be separate then, so we would be voting on the 4064 and then 3395, and then the cottage clusters are gonna be separate.
Yep, 2 separate items.
I think it was smart, to separate them,
Yes,
just exactly
I
because of
agree.
this, yeah, exactly.
Anyone else got any questions, Joan?
It sounds as though the cottage cluster structures have a lot more leeway as to their size. Am I reading that correctly? They can be this big, or they can be the clusters, the cottages.
Yeah.
They can be as small as what?
Yeah, I think your staff has 800 square foot footprint right now as the maximum size.
Okay.
You'll see communities, Astoria allows up to 1,000 or 1,200 square feet, depending upon whether it's a 1.5 story, maybe it's a little smaller, or a ranch-style development. But yeah, that's pretty common with the cottages. I will say that a single-family lot, so lots outside of a mobile home park, but a single-family lot, like Counselor, you had asked the question about the fifth wheel. As long as a dwelling has a place to eat, a place to sleep, and a place to go to the bathroom, and you can get in and out of your bedroom window, that house can be as small as you can engineer it or architect. It can be 300-400 square feet, if you can meet all of those building code requirements.
So that's what gives me pause,
Mhm.
is, in the back of my mind, I'm a pessimist at heart, so I'm seeing what begins as a pretty nice little thing.
Yeah.
In 3 years, depending on who's living there, can be really, really in bad shape.
Well, no storage, right? Lack of storage. And I'm sorry, Spencer, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, just one thing too is, we've had the ADU legislation for how long now?
5-6 years.
5-6 years. There have not been many ADUs. So the market is really going to determine, and the developers that are building houses are really going to determine how they, want to do this, regardless of kind of what we have in place. And ADUs have been legal for a number of years. I know in my past experience, we can count it probably on two hands, the total number of ADUs that have been added to Newport. So just because it's allowed doesn't mean it's going to happen. But if you do, the changes that you do make, it potentially could happen. So
Yeah.
But it's really going to be driven more by the market than again, as Curtis indicated, cities don't build houses. It's developers build houses, and if you have an expensive lot, you're probably not going to be able to afford to put a small, it's just not going to make sense to do that. So
Well, hopefully, that's that unknown, I guess.
The lots are gonna be, you said that we're gonna lose some area just because of where it's at on that complex, or that lot.
The
right there.
annexation.
That annexation.
The annexation.
Yeah. How much are we losing right there? It's also gonna
30
cut,
feet.
10,000 square feet.
yeah, I
so-
mean, it's gonna cut those other potential lots down.
Yeah.
So where we might have been able to get 8 houses, now we're only able to get 4, 4.5.
40 cottages.
Yeah, and I don't mean to beat the dead horse, but I guess as we're looking at cottage clusters at planning commission level, we see that we already allow it, well, it's a conditional use process, but it's 2 to 4 units, they're all 1,200 square feet in size, and they're all kind of orientated and towards like a common greenery, and that's all our code says. And so we thought it would be a good idea to kind of look at cottage cluster code and make sure that's really something that works well for the city, and that's for city council to ultimately determine. And so we looked at different examples across the state, and at the very back of your packet is an example from Salem, and it's an 8-unit complex. All the houses are between 600 and 800 square feet. It's been existing for, I think, 50-plus years.
1930s, I think.
So a long
Maybe,
time.
I don't know, but I've seen those, and they look very cute.
There's one in Cottage Grove too, down by the.
A brand new one, yeah. And so I believe the ones in Salem are all renter-based, and I think a lot of students live there too.
Can we get around this by designating a zoning? Like, can we turn it into a zoning area if we find a piece of property or a side of the town that you can zone the cottage clusters and contain it? So that they're with their own?
Potentially.
Big wall.
I like that idea.
And so I think,
There's no walls, still streets and stuff, just they're in their area, which makes more sense if they were in a certain area and outside of single-family homes and everything else, and that they had their own.
I can see both sides of that.
yeah, I don't know if you'll buy this or not, Mayor Smith, but they're kind of like in between houses and apartments, because they're like an apartment, but they look like small little houses, and they still have the same 10-foot spacing requirement in between each unit. So they're kind of designed to like fit within a single-family residential neighborhood, but still be for renters, still be for elderly people who want to downsize a home, people who are single, people who don't have a family.
They want to be in town closer to things that they need to use, like little shopping centers, the stores, the doctors and stuff like that.
Sure.
So over on the east side of I-5 right now, like around the motel, around that kind of stuff, would be more of an appropriate place to put one like that.
Yeah, and
Than to be out in the middle of the housing area, like over on the other side of the elementary school, where it'd be way away from everything.
Well, it was mentioned earlier storage, so if you have these smaller homes and they got 2 cars and there's nowhere to park for only one of them, and then they're trying to downsize, but people really don't like getting rid of their stuff. And then all of a sudden, now we got developers want to come in and we want, another section of storage. That's a concern, especially at a small town that we have right now. We don't have a ton of property, so we're trying to build houses, but then it turns into, all the storage is in the yard, or you got a temporary carport full of crap, and I mean, there's potential down the line that can turn into a whole lot more mess right there with just the storage alone. And downsize is great if you want to, good for you. But, I think they need to have, there needs to be different zoning, just like the city is zoned residential, commercial, residential down here in Second, that we're running into that issue right now. We need to maybe identify some zoning room if we're gonna allow this, to allow it in, a 5 acre or 10 acre area that can kind of be that, be its own cottage cluster area. And not segregating, but it is putting it in its own area. It makes more sense for that community that they have the same mindset, and maybe there's more room for storage, or that we require some sort of.
Because I mean, just according to the map that you even provided, that looks like a little park setting, like an apartment complex where they have their own pool. They got their own little area. So that would be like, I mean, to me, it seems more like an apartment complex. And so, I mean, that just kind of makes sense have a designated area for that.
It gives us more control over it too.
That's what I want for the city to be able to have more control.
And just, we do already allow 2 to 4 unit cottage clusters in our low density residential zone, and they have not been historically built, so.
That's one right up first, sorry to interrupt. That is the one I was talking about earlier, right? That's a cottage cluster. If you go right to the top of the first, come to that hill and crest over, there's one right there, because there's like 4 of them in a small little, maybe a 1 acre lot.
I think those are duplexes.
Are they?
No,
I don't
they're
think those are
single family.
No.
There's 2 in the back and then there's 2.
Yeah, because that lot ain't more than an acre, so, and there's 4 homes on it.
That might have been before planning
Is that a
review.
panhandle lot?
Yeah, you drive in and there's 2 in the front and 2 in the back. But then if you go out just past urban growth boundary, you got 19 acres, you want to build a house on one side, can't do that, heaven forbid. You can't do that. 19 acres out there, but I can't put 2 houses on it, but by God, in here, we'll put houses everywhere. So, yeah, I got lots of issues with this, but.
Yeah, sure.
Anyone else? No, does that wrap up the cottage clusters as well as the House bill for everyone? We don't have to go back over and, we'll call B and C done.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Curtis.
Next.
Thank
I know some people in the back that want to get to.
Will be up on April
We've got someone
14th.
I'll say something
Bill?
about the cottage cluster. It was highly discussed at the planning commission of who would actually own, how you would structure ownership. Would it be one person and they're all rented? Would they try and sell each one individually? So they went through all of that. They also discussed the fact that most of the people that would want to live in one wouldn't own vehicles. They would want to be located somewhere near mass transit or stuff like that. So parking was discussed, who would actually own them was discussed, and the fact that no contractor is going to go out and just build these things if he can't sell them or do something with them. So to a certain extent, the market itself is going to kind of self-regulate where one of these is built. We personally went down to Cottage Grove, visited it, and it was really nice looking. The one that's built down there. So if you've never seen one, Cottage Grove is the closest place to actually go see. You don't have to go to the coast. It's built right into a neighborhood.
Isn't that the one story by the high school? Is that the one you're talking about?
I don't think it was near a school, but I
Right
could
by
be
fire
wrong.
department.
The one we visited, they had, I don't know, kind of requirements. If you lived in there, you had to go to monthly meetings because it was a common shared space. So it.
Talking county now.
Own your own and do your own thing, because of the lot requirements and things like that. So there's a lot of discussion that you guys are discussing that the planning commission did, and they met twice on cottage clusters, simply because the first time, it raised so many issues, they wanted to think about it again and discuss, what would happen if they actually got built. So, I mean, it wasn't that the planning commission just thought, oh, what the heck, let's throw it in and.
Well, don't get me wrong, I'm not mad at the planning commission, I was just kind
Yeah, well,
of so surprised at the unanimous vote, yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of the questions you guys are asking were brought up and discussed at the planning commission too.
And just to chime in, so at the planning level, we looked at cottage cluster code, thought, okay, this is what Creswell's is, can it be changed? And then it was kind of planning commission's task to review some sets of changes and give it to you all to decide if you want to go with it or just kind of keep status quo.
So basically, if we vote for this, we're taking action that allows us to not be impugn, I guess, from lawsuits, but.
No, cottage clusters, you have flexibility on that.
Yeah, we have flexibility on that piece, not the other pieces.
It's the first one that's.
Okay.
I do have one more question.
I want to make sure my notes are right. Go ahead, Alan.
So on the duplex, so single-family home, they have to have 1.5 car spaces?
No parking's required, but no, yeah.
Oh, okay, so, but on duplex, 1 per unit? Okay.
That it? All right, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, item D, Spencer.
Sure.
Discuss Second Street Local Improvement District. The back of the room here is all been waiting for it, so let's get after it.
So anyway, just to kind of bring everyone up to speed, council adopted resolution 2025-05 at the last meeting. That resolution modified the original engineer's report to reduce the assessment to the first 4 feet of sidewalk, and that reduced those assessment costs 20% on the properties that were in the engineer's report. And I attached a sheet showing what those values are after my report, immediately after my report. The last column is kind of where that adjustment would bring it to. At the April 14th meeting, we'll be having a public hearing, and following that public hearing, the council will need to finalize assessment methodology and order the public improvement to commence. If this action is taken, the council will also be asked to amend the budget to proceed with construction project in the current fiscal year, then award bids for the construction of 2nd and D Street. So those are all things that are queued up for the April 14th meeting. If the construction can be awarded at the April 14th meeting, then the project can be completed during winter construction season. So that's kind of what's driving the April 14th date for the bid award. Council asks that the amount being proposed for the assessment to the property owners be discussed at this meeting here today, so that's why it's on the agenda. And one of the things, if you go in my report to the second and third pages, I talked about kind of what the alternatives are that the council can consider in this particular matter. First of all, council can obviously proceed with the assessment at $78.52 per linear foot, which is a 4 feet of sidewalk value. This would be consistent with the modified engineer's report adopted by the resolution at the last council meeting. The council could consider further reducing the assessment after the public hearing. That's an option that's in place. Council could consider not creating an LID. And if the LID wasn't created, then council would have to decide whether to delay construction. And The other thing that's been discussed about were obtaining grants for the project. And again, for any potential grant process, the project would have to be pushed back probably a couple of years by the time we go through the sequence of applying for funds and receiving funds. I do believe that Second Street is not a high-scoring project for getting any relief through grants. Typically, it's just not that competitive of a project. And this year, we did have this last round, we did have what we thought was a competitive project that didn't get funded through Safe Routes to Schools. So those are very competitive funds, and it's really, you really have to have a good competitive project in order to do that, meaning ultimate safety issue for kids traveling primarily to and from schools. So Second Street, there was one project in the Safe Routes to School plan for the intersection of F and Second Street for crosswalks at that location, but that's the only project that was identified in the Safe Routes to School plan that was adopted by the council a couple of years ago. And then the last option, obviously, is not proceeding with the project at this time. Again, bids are currently being taken. We'll have those, we're opening bids on April 2nd, so we'll have an idea of what the prices are for going forward with this project. But those are a few options that the council can consider after the hearing. On the hearing on the 14th, we'll be getting notices published in the paper. We have to publish them at least 10 days prior to the April 14th hearing. And we publish them twice. We're also going to put together a packet that's going to get mailed out to all the property owners talking about the project and the LID to give the property owners as much information about this as we can. At the public hearing, the council will be, or the notice that will go out, it'll indicate that the report of the city engineer is available for inspection in the office of the recorder. We will also be mailing that out to everybody, so they'll actually have a copy of it, but we need to follow the code provisions for this. Objections and remonstrances to the improvement will be heard by the council on April 14th, and that the improvement will be abandoned for not less than 6 months if written remonstrances, I never could say that word, so a term that I first saw in Oregon, but it's a term which means a protest, are filed before or during the hearing by the owners of 2/3 of the frontage of the property to be assessed. So that's one of the code standards. And then the notice will also include a description of the properties to be benefited by the improvement, along with the dollar amounts for each of the properties. So that will all be part of the notice that goes out to all the property owners. And that should be going out by the end of this week. Again, it's not required that we send this same information to all the property owners, but we are going to do that so that everyone has that information. So again, that's kind of the background of kind of where we're at and what the next step is, which is on April 14th. And be glad to answer any questions from the council on that.
Go ahead.
I was just curious, have you received any written remonstrances?
Yeah, we've received one.
One, okay, thank you.
Stacy?
I was talking to somebody about this issue, not somebody that lives here in Creswell, just a friend. And he told me about a similar situation happening at another city many years ago. And the property owners were very surprised when they received their next tax bills after the improvements were done, because the assessment went up on all their homes. Do we know if that's going to happen here?
I've never seen that happen. We've done street projects in Newport. You're capped at 3% increase per year unless you physically add an addition to your house or you do something to upgrade your own house. But the folks are capped at the 3% increase.
So they wouldn't consider improvements like the sidewalks that the same property owners are in charge of and have to maintain financially. That's not going to, and the new driveways, that's not going to increase their.
Yeah, I don't believe so. We'll confirm that with the
Okay.
county assessor.
Good question.
So,
Good question. Helen?
is this the new map of how this is gonna go?
Cliff?
Is this the new map?
Yeah, that's,
Up-to-date map?
yeah, that's the current map, isn't it?
It looks like it, but
Yeah, Jim?
Cliff said yes.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
the current.
okay, that's the latest map.
Okay, so, there was talk that, this one property owner, where his parking is gonna be right in front of his house, and that first one is still a full-size.
Right, and that's going away. This is a
Okay.
map that we had prior to that discussion.
Okay,
so.
that's why I was wondering if this is an updated, is this is what it's going for? Okay.
That's-
Where the compact car is?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, the compact car should be over on the other side.
right, right.
But we're eliminating one of those parking spaces.
Okay, and so the question for this landowner here, with so much of his property, I mean, he's gonna look at, if his house is right there, he's gonna look out at parked cars. Is he still gonna have to pay the same price as everybody else for the linear foot that he's losing? So he's losing half of his property right there with just the front of the sidewalk.
What do you mean he's losing half?
Well, I mean, half of his property, he's not gonna be able to park in front of his house, during business hours, during the day.
That's public, he can park there if he wants. That's all public
Okay,
parking.
so, is he still gonna have to pay the same as everybody else,
Yeah, he
the
pays
4 foot?
linear footage, 4 feet of sidewalk.
Right, so he's gonna be paying the same as everybody else, but he's gonna lose part of it. I mean, if you look at, what I'm trying to, is, he's losing his parking spot. Why is he paying the same as everybody else when he's losing part of his, front of his property?
Well, he's not, everything's within the right of way.
Right.
The parking layout is different than what the existing is, which is basically people parking on a gravel shoulder at that location. And so actually when the project is done, there's gonna be more parking that he can park there or anyone else can park in front. So
Right.
so it's actually increasing the parking that's available on the street.
Yeah, I understand that. It's just.
It's just a
yeah.
different configuration, so.
Correct. I mean, I don't know if I'm trying to say this properly or not, but it's just.
Picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, yeah, to me, he's losing so much in front of his house and his property.
Which will affect the value of his home
I
potentially. I think
mean,
it's gonna be a lot
that's-
harder to sell.
That's what I see.
I
Yeah.
believe you're talking about Brandon's house. I'm definitely gonna, hey, you guys are gonna
Save every time.
you guys will definitely get a chance to speak. But I think you're talking about Brandon's house. And Brandon, just devil's advocate, Brandon is getting part of a driveway, the majority of a driveway put in at his house, which he currently doesn't have.
For the record, I didn't ask for that, though.
He did not. He was just such a nice guy, we thought it, he was losing us
I
behind.
don't want you guys to try to use that against me. Because
I mean.
That's why he said further away than Buck, so.
As an owner of a piece of property, I mean, if someone's gonna come in and do something, okay, I should be able to use my property.
I
and
agree.
in front of that, I'm gonna be paying for the sidewalk. And, I mean, people are gonna curb that, and they're gonna be breaking that up, so he's gonna be responsible for having to pay for that fixing of that. But he has no say-so, and why is he paying the same percentage as someone down the block that they're not parking in front of his to come to this bakery? Is kind of where I'm going. Why is he paying the same percentage as everybody else?
Because we have to.
I do understand that, but I don't think it's the property of everybody else in the city too to pay for this.
I agree.
But he's losing it because of what's going on across the street.
Well, hopefully the driveway will balance it. I don't have a good answer for you.
Yeah, I know, but that's
It's
where
all kind of a value issue, and to someone, that may be a positive thing, to someone, it may be a negative thing. But right now, there's basically one parking space, or maybe two in front of the property. There's gonna be more than that when they get done, but it's a different configuration, so.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've all spoken with Brandon, Cher, Wayne, Buck. I've spoken with Spencer earlier this week, and I have requested that we do some sort of layout or mapping of the sidewalks in the area. We're looking at the cost to, whether it's ribbon or paint, but we come out there and we physically paint the sidewalks where they're supposed to go. We ribbon it so you can see on your property from your front porch where that's supposed to be. So you have a visual on top of a cost that we're negotiating here. But you can see the cost and what you're gonna get, where the driveway, how far it's gonna go up here is what we're gonna cover. We've talked about that. We are trying to move forward on that. I don't know if we have answers just yet, but I have requested that for you guys, that you can physically see, here's the sidewalk, here's the 4 feet, here's the quick parking spots, everything will be hopefully laid out as best it can, so you're gonna have an actual visual, which I gotta imagine would be a heck of a lot better for you to comprehend and understand and accept as we're moving forward.
Yeah, and it did get a cost on doing that. It would be $5,000 to do the entire street.
Okay.
To do.
To do all these properties?
To lay out the curbs, sidewalks, so people can visually see.
So
it.
what do we need to do with the council to do that, to move?
I think if there's a consensus to do it, we'll just.
Okay. Well, I'd like to ask the council right now, so Alonzo, are you willing to spend the $5,000 to lay out the map for the citizens to see where their parking spots are gonna
This
be?
would be
where the
marking it on
sidewalks
the
are gonna be?
grounds, basically, where the curbs and.
That would cost $5,000 to do that? Who would
Because
do
it-
that?
Yeah.
Take a surveyor
Surveyor.
to do it.
Gosh.
Well, he's actually gonna lay it out, so it's gonna be.
Yeah, it's pretty
I mean,
extensive,
pretty
so-
much right where it's gonna finish at. Give or take an inch or two, it should be right there, so it'll be, everybody should be able to walk around for a week or so, if not longer, with that paint to be able to view it.
And that is for,
That is for every property on the list to see what they're gaining, losing, all the above.
Can we ask?
Yeah, one second, I wanna get the council first, I promise I'm gonna let you.
well, that's what is the value, if I may ask, what is the
Okay.
value of this to you guys?
Very important,
Okay.
because right now, we're gonna just go on my side of the street. There's a house up for sale, Jason's house, my house, Brandon's, and the community center, whatever that
Creswell
is,
first.
the historic building. Okay, that street has been said to be, when those lots were made, 250 feet long. It is not 250 feet long, it is only 246 feet long. So, I'm looking at, okay, when you guys say, it says you have on your deed that you have 100 feet frontage. I also don't have 100 feet of frontage, because, don't hit me, somebody's fence.
Tell me not to.
Control your neighbors, would you?
I only have 97 feet, or 96.5 feet. If I go between the fences right now that stand. I don't know where that's at. I'm not paying 100 if I don't have 100. So it also comes down, basically this has opened up a can of worms. We're gonna tell you, you have 50 feet of property. It's gonna go from here to here. We know, this is yours, so this is what your drawing looks like. Now you're gonna go, you've got 100 feet, okay? That's gonna go from here to here. This is what it's gonna look like. You've got your driveway. You've requested that a driveway be put back in. I'm still thinking about that one.
I think the driveway depends on elevation, strictly elevation, am I right there, Cliff?
Well, I think there's something,
On-
yeah, there
not
was something
every-
on the double driveway for your property.
It's not,
that was
it's,
discussed.
yes, because I drive through there, I have it, right now there's brush and dirt in there, and that doesn't matter. I drive back there, to the back part of my property. I back vehicles in there and stuff. So if that gets taken away, because the ground's flat right now. But if you put in curb, I'm gonna hop the curb and back up over that. So,
The point of this is to, like you said, delineate.
What-
Buck's done his homework too, and he's found pins on his property. They don't match up with what he's found out with what the survey is. So this is also the same point, is that we get a third party out here to survey it and put it on the ground. Then we'll actually have measurements, give or take, a foot, 10 foot, 50 feet.
so what this would look like, yeah, so we had surveyors out there today. A very nice group of surveyors, not very rude like the last set.
Well, it's improvement. We're growing here. We're trying.
They listened, they talked, they explained. Very good group of people and what they were doing. No problem, because they were actually working. It's important to us to see what this is gonna look like, because it's, one, if you're gonna do this, I spent years landscaping. I got plants everywhere. There's things I wanna save. How much is gonna go? Then next question, can I?
You gotta get one more.
Can I put a construction fence where that line starts? And like, can I set up in a construction fence and say, this is mine?
Cliff would probably be the right one to ask, but I don't know why an orange temporary barrier fence can't be put up, because it's simply easily put down too, so I don't know
Well,
why
while
you can't.
the whole thing's going on, I have
Sell the fence, by
dogs,
the way.
and I do like to keep them in the yard. So,
Okay. Well, let me, okay, we'll get to your answer to their questions, but Alonzo, how do you, we'll start with you and keep going around the table here.
If you guys on Second Street really want to see this and you think it's going to be an aid to you, I guess we can do that. I would much rather see that $5,000 go to something else. That's a lot of money just to see. I don't think it's going to change the project. The project moves forward. I don't think it's going to change anything. I think it's going to be $5,000 spent.
you're asking us to spend more to get the sidewalks.
We're working on that. We're working on that. But anyway, so yeah, that's my thought. I mean, I'm not saying no. I'm saying that I guess if there's 4 people here, you guys, all 4 of you, really want to see this done?
I'm not the one that requested it.
Okay, well,
I requested it in talking with.
Okay, that's good. Good enough. Good enough.
Yeah, in talking with certain people on Second Street and.
Okay, Mr. Bazinet, Mr. You have it.
Well, I have a few things to say, but to answer that, I am the one that is saying, that is fighting the
Challenging the
current
marking.
survey. Okay. Because, and this is why, your surveyor is now changing the deed of my property. I am no longer a 7,000 square foot according to your surveyor. Your surveyor says that I am now 100 by 67.6 feet. My deed that has been recorded in my lot has been bought and sold numerous times as a 100 by 70 foot lot. So y'all are changing my deed to my property without any proper compensation. Not to mention, I have some arguments because I have done my homework, I have done my research, and I'm in the process of getting a public records request through the city because that's the proper way, and I fully support that. But I know when that road was put in. I know that it was a 40-foot right-of-way. In 1999, it went to a 50-foot right-of-way. To the west is where the property was gained. Now, your road is a 50-foot, but it's going 25 and 25, and here's the catch. If my pin that I say is correct, because it gives me 70 feet, is saying, no, Steve Ward has told me, no, that's not right. You can't do blah, blah, blah. He was actually kind of rude to me the last time I spoke to him. It's because he's gone 25 feet to the left and 25 feet to the right. You guys are coming onto my property. You are changing my deed to my property.
Versus starting from your pin and going west,
Yeah.
to hopefully clarify for everyone else.
Yeah.
You start from your pin and go west, that's 50 feet that way. Now that they're coming into your property,
coming
because you're
into my
splitting it in the middle and going
Yeah.
25 your way.
So you have
Just to clarify.
whatever amount of feet still to the west that allegedly is a right-of-way. And there's no, and now I have 3 pins that the surveyors, because the last survey crew is like, well, we're getting a reading right here in the middle of your laurel bush, so that's probably the pin. They set a pin right there. So I'm 67.6 feet now. So if you guys want to pay me money, because you have the right to take eminent domain, that is your right. But you are not in the right-of-way. You can't tell me, because in 1946, when the road was first assessed for, if I may.
Go ahead.
1946, when South 2nd Street was extended, it was a 40-foot right-of-way. Is this?
Your next block over.
Yeah, so I'm right here. Okay. So it ended about right here, 1946. 1949, again, surveyed. 1978, again, surveyed. Up here, there was a cross in the sidewalk that was the monument that they used. 1946, 1949, 1978. They all used the 2 crosses that were embedded into the sidewalk that's been there since 1946, mind you. Now, around 93, I believe, is when the railroad spike was slammed into the road, and that's now the monument that everybody's using. They took no ties that I can find to those monuments that the people in the 40s and the 70s were using. I can't find any record of any ties to those. So who's to say that that spike wasn't placed wrong? And you can't tell me that a railroad spike driven into the concrete, and that road's been resurfaced, I'm sure, and pulled up, and who's to say that they didn't put that spike in the right spot? That is not a good monument. You guys, I'm a blue collar worker. I work my ass off for this county, okay? Nothing, I have earned every last bit of what I've earned. I paid for it out of my own pocket. No one's ever given me a freaking handout.
Can I ask you a question? real quick?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're saying that they extended it to the east, I think it was, or to the west? Okay, so now did that property on the other side, did they lose that 2 feet?
The 10 feet?
Or the 10 feet? Did they lose that on the survey?
From my understanding, Curtis has left, so I spoke to Curtis over the phone. He's the one that found that record, and he said in 1999, the owner of this lot, and I believe this lot here, or no, sorry, it was this lot, gave the 10 feet of right of way to the west. That's your 50 feet. Your engineer's telling you guys that your 50 feet is what he's saying. And they've now recorded that with the county. So that now makes me 67.6 feet. You guys have taken my land. You haven't paid for it. Nothing. I'm not opposed to this project, and I'm sorry if I come across as angry or heightened, but this is passionate to me because I have earned that land. I have worked my butt off for that land.
You don't have to apologize.
And it infuriates me, and I will be the squeaky wheel. Yes, am I trying to sell my home? Absolutely. Because I can't stand the bakery. I can't stand the traffic. I got 6 kids. I'm trying to get out to the country to where my kids can be kids. Okay? But if I sell my house, and you guys take that property, I'm selling my house at a 7,000 square foot lot right now. But that's wrong, because you guys are saying that I'm 67.6 feet, because you're saying your right-of-way comes into my property. Your surveyors were wonderful that came out today. I thank you guys very much for doing that. That puts me at ease. But I now have 3 pins on this corner, and I now have 2 pins on this corner.
Let's see if we can get, hang on, I don't want to cut you short, but let's see if we can get some
Just follow up for a second, just want to make sure. You said the surveyors that came out, now, because did we not discuss that the county was going to come out and have the final say in that?
Brief you on that.
Yeah, and I spoke to the county, but Spencer knows probably way better.
Yeah. So anyway, Buck had called me, and several of the neighbors had called the county to find out what the extent of what the county was going to do as far as trying to verify the location of the right-of-way. And the understanding that we had with what the county was going to do is not what the county is willing to do. And so the surveyor that's out there now has been hired by West Tech, and they're paying the bill for it because it was West Tech that thought the county would be able to verify the location of the right-of-way. When we found out that they were just recording it, then West Tech on their own hired a surveyor to do a check on the initial survey that was done. And so that's currently, that's the surveyors that you're dealing with.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's news to me. I had no idea that was happening.
It was in my status report.
So you ended up with extra pins because it didn't land in the same place?
I have so many pins now.
But we're not surveyors. We're not trying to take anybody's property. We just need someone to come and give us the final official.
That's what we're doing with that surveyor today, and that's what I suggested that we do this and spend the 5K, and you're not wrong, that would be better somewhere else.
I'd rather see 5K go back into everybody on Second Street's pockets than spend it on some paint on the sidewalk.
One more, Mark, and then I want to get the councilors.
Sorry, and when I say you guys are taking my land, because in the end, West Tech is an extension of the city of Creswell.
Of course.
It's fair.
So yes, by definition, you guys are taking my land without proper compensation. And I do believe that West Tech is incorrect, and they have just designed the road to match up with what they want to do. So yes, in retrospect, the city of Creswell is taking my land. I'm not opposed to the sidewalks, I'm not opposed to any of that. I think that it does need done. However, I would like you guys to dig in a little bit, if you would, to see if any ties were taken to those monuments that people have been using since the 60s, or 40s, sorry. I would like to see those found, because that sidewalk is still there. Now, the sidewalk over here has been refinished, so those are gone. That cross monument is gone. But this is still the original sidewalk, and it's there, 100%.
Have you talked to Curtis about that?
I have not had a chance to talk to Curtis about that yet. I don't mind doing that.
I'm not asking you to, I
I
just
got,
curious.
I got a note, but I want to get,
Yeah.
I want to get around to everybody else real quick.
Thank you, Council.
Yep, and I want to make sure they get, that Wayne and Brandon got something to say. So Joan, what do you feel? How are you feeling on that?
I would like it for myself.
Okay. Stacy?
I have a few thoughts on this. We have no choice but to repair that road.
No, absolutely.
We have no choice but to repair that road in the way the state demands that we repair that road. As much as I would like to just go in there and put some concrete down and call it good, don't get to do that, right? I feel like this entire council has been pretty open to negotiating that lid down quite a lot. And when we're doing that, we're actually putting the cost on the rest of our community. So I have a really hard time agreeing to spending $5,000 more just so you can see where the lines are gonna land. I'm sorry, I'm a no on that one.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree too.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
We're asking a lot from our, we're asking a
it's a
lot
waste
from
of
our
money.
neighbors, and by not charging the entire lid, and we haven't decided that yet, but that's kind of the trajectory we've been going. So to spend an additional $5,000 on top of that, I think would be pretty egregious.
Okay.
I'll move on.
Clark?
Well, let's see. So I'm from originally, which I, more than half my life ago, everybody paid taxes into the one bucket, and everybody, there was no thing tied to the particular section of street that was going down. It was just, when a street needed to be repaired, it was repaired, it was taken out of the taxes. So this is kind of new to me, and I'm having problems with it, mainly because what the state is forcing us to do in order to accomplish the road repair. So, I don't know, I'm sort of like, $5,000 is a lot. And on top of all of this.
I think one thing to remember, this is a $2.1 million project, so, but it is $5,000.
Out of our general spending.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you're on the fence? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I'm really on the fence.
That's fine, we're not necessarily put it in stone, but we're having that conversation. So right now, it's just, we're having that conversation, see where we're at, see where we're going. Alan, how do you feel?
That's kind of where I'm on the fence as well, is because we're asking the rest of the city to pay for something that they're already paying a lot, or they're gonna be paying a lot for. And then I know people are gonna be paying quite a bit for some new sidewalks at the same time.
Again, we're trying to set a precedent too, so this decision is the
Yeah,
precedent for 10th Street.
exactly.
We probably need to do the same for 10th Street.
Oh my gosh, don't.
Yeah, and that's gonna be.
I'm gonna be consistent if anything, I'll be consistent.
Right, so, I mean, myself, I would like to see this, but am I gonna ask everybody else in the city of Creswell to do it? That's a tough decision.
Okay.
Is seeing this gonna change your mind?
Huh?
Will seeing this change your vote, or is it gonna make you decide not to do the project?
No, not at
Okay,
all.
that's what I'm saying, it's
Yeah.
kind of, that's why we're, anyway.
Yeah, I know, it's, my biggest thing is, are we gonna put another $5,000 out for everybody else just to see what is actually gonna happen?
So you're on the fence.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, how do you feel?
I'd rather keep the 5,000. And, yes, I would like those guys to be able to see it. Maybe there's individual properties that can do it. I understand it's a big project, but it's a hard one.
Spencer?
The other potential option, I don't know how many property owners really want to see this. The cost certainly would be substantially less if there were, if it's just a handful of property owners that are interested in doing that, that would certainly be a significant savings.
Okay, hold on real quick. So I only wanted this for you guys. I think the counselors have brought up fair points, and I didn't think it was gonna be $5,000, honestly. I thought it'd be a couple, so I really didn't think it would be that big a deal. And I think a couple grand is worth having the peace of mind to know where the properties are at. And I think it's important. Buck's brought up plenty of good points. If that was my property, I'd be fighting as hard as he would too. You're not taking 3 feet of my land without compensation. There ain't no way in God's green earth that's happening. So don't apologize for that. But I can go either way. If it helps you guys, then I'm for it. If the council agrees that maybe we put $5,000 towards somewhere else and we're making other citizens pay for it, I'm with that too. But I want to give you guys some comfort, and I want to set a precedent going forward, and this was part of my suggestion. So with that being said, Buck, go ahead.
Sorry, so doing road construction before, we're going to see when they stake it out where everything's gonna be. We will get that because that's gonna be a requirement that they stake it out. However, I think it would ease some minds if maybe when that happens, if Cliff could come and explain what the markers mean, because not everybody knows what 0.005 grade means and sidewalk here or this and that. So maybe some explanation without spending the $5,000, because I'm in agreement. Yes, $5,000 chump change to a $2.1 million project. Absolutely, that's freaking, you might as well pee into the wind. Because it's not necessary, because we are going to see that. I think the biggest thing is we would like to see at least a stake driven to where what the property line is. And if that's something that if you can talk to West Tech and that's something that the new surveyors are willing to do on West Tech's, because I'll tell you what, they were happy to drive a corner pin on my property to add to the vibe that I now have. So I literally think that would ease a lot of our minds.
When would we get the report back? The survey report?
They're just doing their field work right now, so I think they're trying to turn it around pretty quickly. Did they say anything to you?
They did a majority of the work. Obviously, the bakery traffic was really, really terrible today, and so it took them time because they were having to raise their levels or their lasers up and everything. They said they were going to try to finish today. If not, one guy will be back tomorrow to finish, and then their main guy is going to look it over, do more research and everything. And I did bring up the crosses to them, and that is one thing I would like to at least see if there was ties taken to the railroad spike that's now in the center that we're using as a monument, which I think is a stupid monument to use. Because I did road construction in Alaska, and we used all sorts of different other things that don't move, that are inanimate objects, which is more smarter than a railroad spike. But hey, I can't say what was done in the 90s.
Wayne, how do you feel?
Yeah, I think the same thing, that keep your 5,000. As long as we can get some idea, like when the stakes go down of what's going to be taking place, that's good enough for me, and quite a few of the other neighbors feel the same way too. And then that way, especially with the boundary markers and all that, I find it a little insane. I mean, I used to own his house, and I had that done in 1978. My lot, the 2 lots that I have now, were all surveyed back then, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, no, that's not the case. It's a little bizarre to me.
It is kind of bizarre.
It is.
Yeah.
You owned it until 2005.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Sherry, you'd like to see it done?
Listening to Buck and stuff, I do want to see, I would like the properties, so when you guys say you're going to be charging us the LID, I would really like to see how you guys are measuring out the properties.
Okay.
But then again, like I said, Trevor said, the street is not 250 feet long. It is less than that. So that divided by 5, because basically it's equivalent to 5 lots, I'm taking 2 hits because I have the large wide lot.
Okay.
I understand that. But like I said, a can of worms have been opened, and now it's like, where is everything? Those homes were built in 1907 and sooner. They went through, they designed lots, how they did it, how they measured it, that's fine. But that's what's been in place. Now this is going on and, you know, okay, you learn, hey, you do your due diligence before you buy someplace, you have it surveyed. You know, that's what I'm learning or hearing. But before you charge me for 100 feet.
Make sure it's 100 feet. Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
Can I say?
Let me get Brandon real quick. Brandon?
Do I have a chance to speak after this specific point too? 'Cause I had-
Yes, absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
As far as the 5,000, it's not gonna make a damn bit of difference to me. I mean, I appreciate that you were trying to do, that doesn't go discounted, thank you. But it wasn't my request. I think it would be nice if it was done, but I'm certainly not for $5,000. I don't, like she said, I'm not gonna expect my neighbors down the way to pay for that. I do think that it's not justified to say that the citizens of Creswell shouldn't, or we couldn't put any burden on them for this, because everybody uses Second Street, it's not just me.
Percentage, yeah,
And the
absolutely.
bakery has way more people using Second Street than I do, and we're all paying the same amount. So I do think that we could pay less per foot, and it's not unfair to put it on the city of Creswell, because I'm not a small community in the back that like only the residents go to.
Yeah.
But I think this $5,000, as she said, I don't expect my neighbors up First Street to pay for me to see. I appreciate the gesture, but I don't need the peace of mind. You're taking and doing what you're going to do regardless of where the pins fall.
Okay. So I'll definitely give you another chance to speak. I'd like to get Spencer and Cliff, how feasible is Buck's request to be out there and have a surveyor? Because in the part of the project, normally you're gonna do that pretty quick, but that normally means once those stakes are on the ground, you're coming out and starting to rip up ground pretty soon after.
Yeah, I'll toss that one to Cliff because he's the guy that's gonna be in the field, so.
Yeah, normally they come out and they stake everything, they put offsets out, and so those stakes are put out prior to the project starting, so that's not that hard.
Okay.
Before the project starts, it has to be staked so that the contractor knows where to dig to, where the curb
Sure.
cuts are, so.
How long before they actually put an excavator in the ground though, were those stakes?
I don't know that I could give you a timeline, but it's usually a week or two before they put, shovel in.
Yeah, they don't like them
I
too long.
I'm
before.
familiar with construction as well, but you are the Public Works Director, I'm not gonna speak for you, and I wanna make sure that Second Street knows too, that if we do go along with, just say we go along with what's in front of us and we don't adjust it, you'll get your stakes in the ground, but it will be after we decide on this, it's too late. And so that's what I'm trying to make sure you guys know on the 14th, when we yay, nay, or do nothing, you will not have those stakes in the ground until that point. And then I do believe that your numbers can still be adjusted, however. If you're the 67 by 100, I don't know why we would have to pay you or something.
Yeah, so the way the process works by the code is that, once the hearing is done on the 14th, the council will either make a decision to order the project.
Let's say we move forward. Let's just say we move forward with what we have in front of us. Let's
Then
go with that.
what'll happen is after either the bids are in and complete costs, or at the end of the project, and typically these are done at the end of the project, then there's a second hearing, and at that point, if someone says, well, I only have
They can challenge
97
the
feet
footage.
instead of 100 feet, that's when those items can be brought before the council, before you finalize the actual assessment.
So to be clear, if we move forward with what's in front of us, this will be your assessment, generally speaking. But if we are off, the surveyor is off, then these will be adjusted. Cliff?
Just to be clear on the survey is for the right-of-way where the road falls within that right-of-way. We're not surveying individual property owners, property corners, just so everybody's clear on that.
Yep.
That would be up to the property owner, correct?
Unless you're
Yeah.
gonna be on a corner.
Yeah.
And have 5 pens now.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that
So how are
that
you,
we're as clear as we can be here.
how are you going to justify the charge then? If you do not know, you're just gonna go off the county records that says.
Well, that's what we're doing. We're going off county records. However, there will be a final record that will be presented to you, and if it's off, then we would adjust your assessment. And if we're taking property, which I need Spencer to answer this one, but I assumed if we were taking property, then we would have to cut Buck a check.
Yeah, but it's not really, you know, I understand Buck's point about losing property from what he thought he had, but surveyors, you know, the original survey from D Street to Oregon Avenue was, the original plat was laid out in 79. You know, so we've got that first part that was actually laid out by surveyors back in 1879, and that's D Street to Oregon Avenue on Second Street. You know, there was other activity that occurred then from Second Street, or from D Street heading farther to the south, and that's more current issues that Buck was addressing. But, you know, the problem, and you know, I've dealt with this for lots of years and lots of, in you know, Oregon and in Michigan. You know, I used to think that surveys were, you know, cut and dry and it was right or wrong. But a lot of these surveys that were done over the years used different points, or they made different adjustments. And so trying to make that fit the existing use of land is always a challenge in a survey in an old, well-established neighborhood. So we'll see what we come up with the new survey. But again, you know, the way things are laid out and the way they survey out, sometimes it's not a perfect fit. But we'll have that information, and then we'll be able to kind of sort that out.
Well, as I shared with Buck when I built my house, mine was supposed to be 195 long, and I paid for 195. And then when we get to building, and we go to build the fence, it's 172, and I got stuck with it. I paid for 195, but it was 172. I had to pay Geomax to come back out, and nope, they messed up. Too late, done deal, so.
It's really up to you to make sure that they don't,
Well,
unfortunately.
and unfortunately, surveyors at different points in time over decades may not, some surveyors may have been better than others, you know, so it's always, in old neighborhoods, it's always a challenge to try to figure out
What did you
exactly where those
purchase?
lines.
I purchased 7,000 square feet,
I think that's what matters.
and I'm not 7,000 square feet according to West Tech.
Right, but you purchased more than you own now,
It was
too.
supposed to be, yep. Alonzo?
So to answer that question, will there be conversation about compensation for people?
Only if
some
we're
point?
acquiring
Yes,
easement.
if Buck is right, then we would be acquiring. That's what I'm trying to make clear on camera before we leave here. So especially for them and the neighbors.
Yeah, just,
If we're moving forward, I want to this is the form, if we move forward with this, then everybody's clear. on what we're
just the other clarification on this issue is the way the current, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the way the current design is, regardless of where the lines are, the current design fits, I think, within.
It's about 3 feet
Yeah,
on the mine.
we aren't encroaching on anyone's property with any of the improvements. The way it's designed right now is what I recall, because they adjusted things where there were conflicts with property lines. So we aren't building into, I don't believe we're building into any of the contested areas.
That's the way I understand it right now.
You technically are now
Yeah.
on mine, because they're saying that this is mine and that it's gonna come, the sidewalk is coming to that pin that West Tech set. So you are.
But
now.
is that in your, what you think is your property then?
Yes, because
that's what
that
he's
no
been
longer
saying.
makes me 70 feet
Yeah.
wide, because your right of way is wrong.
I'm trying to clear
Because
this
I thought
up.
that all got adjusted outside of any disputed
Good.
areas, but that's something that I'll confirm.
Because they
so.
drove a pin and a stake and said, this is it.
Right, and that's where the sidewalk's being built?
It's gonna butt right up to that.
Okay.
And
So that's the 3 feet, so.
So that's what I'm trying to clarify. So at some point, when the official survey or whatever, at some point, is there going to be a time for conversation for anyone that project is encroaching on their property?
Yeah. I don't have an answer to that question, because we aren't, if we, let me back up here. These become very complicated questions, and I know enough to be very dangerous. But the issue is if we were building into an area that was claimed as someone else's property, that may be a decision that the council could make. If we're staying out of that area, then I don't think there's any compensation.
We're staying on the area, I get it, but if we're encroaching on the property, then we gotta pay.
But I think that, where is the line? Because it sounds like this could still end up, well, this is my property, well, no, it isn't.
There's
So
a disagreement.
where is, yes, where's the,
And that's what we're trying to determine is where is that line?
Okay.
And then if there's disputes on where that line is, there's several kind of layered issues here. First of all, on the survey, it's really trying to determine where is the actual right-of-way line. So that's what we're really trying to determine. There's a dispute on the original survey that was done, and this new survey that's going to be done is going to determine whether that survey was done incorrectly or whether it was done correctly, and that's something that we'll find out once that's done. So one is where are the lines? The second issue is, are we encroaching with any of the improvements onto anyone's private property? And that's a separate question. And until we get the survey,
we can't answer
we're
that.
really
We can't
speculating.
answer that question until we get an official survey.
Right.
The actual report.
But there's legal issues that go beyond my expertise on this, and
Okay.
but we'll get some answers to it. So.
I don't live in the neighborhood, so I don't have a dog in the fight, but if the waypoint is suspect or in dispute to start with, doesn't matter what your survey is gonna say, because I could say, this is also my chair. But if someone wants to take half of the chair to start with and say, no, yours starts over there, I think you're in for, that's what's opening the can of worms to start with, without that being resolved. I know that time is of the essence too, and decisions need to be made, but it just seems like it's not fair to the city or to the people's property if that already took 3 feet to start with, and now you want to say that I'm not encroaching on your property because I surveyed it and I said I'm good.
Yeah.
Because I have one of the oldest houses in Creswell, 1900.
Yeah,
That
and
might be.
just on that point too, I was involved with a project where all the lot lines were like 5 feet off from where people thought they were, where all the fences were, where all the buildings were, and they had to do a complete replat of that area. But that was an extreme situation, and they actually had to do a replat to get the property lines lined up with historically where the fences were and where the hedges were, and it took tons of agreements with a bunch of property owners to come up to new descriptions for those lots. I mean, that's kind of an extreme situation.
But it's a ripple effect and
Right.
it causes worse
Oh, yeah,
things.
things shift. If it's 3 feet off on that end, is it 3 feet off on the other end?
It's moving everybody.
That's kind of what the question comes on survey.
How did we get this far into the process, only to land on a dispute over property lines? How did that happen? I just need to know.
Because we bought our properties and.
No,
So
no, no.
first,
You're not-
wait.
Excuse me, I'm speaking. Thank you. What I'm asking is, I'm not saying this is your fault. I'm just trying to understand how we're this far into the process. We're about ready to vote to get the project started.
And we don't have.
And we don't have this dispute resolved. I'm trying to understand how we got to
Because the
here.
first thing your engineer told the city council when we were invited to the first meeting was, the property owners are going to tell you that we're taking their land, they're wrong, they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and
Because
that's
the
what
city
he told me the other
started,
day.
the city set the tone with your jerk of an engineer. He's horrible, he's a liar, he's rude, he's been manipulative this whole process. And when he
Sorry to hear
started
that.
the tone of it by telling me I'm uneducated without knowing my background, he doesn't know what the hell I do. That's why we got where we are.
Okay, well, no, I guess the question I need to ask is, have we known about the dispute in this property line for a while? Okay, then I need to ask other people some questions. Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is for sake of argument, we need some sort of official line drawn in the sand. Whether right or wrong, we still may not agree on it, but we can't argue over this all day long. We need someone, that's an official, yes.
And that's what's happening right now. so.
My question was simple though, in the sense of, can't we move forward with this? And then if later there is a dispute, can we not adjust the assessment and pay for the property or?
Yeah, the assessment is something that can be adjusted at the end. If the total number of feet between the first property and the last property in a block, instead of being 1,000 feet is 997 feet, then I mean, council could make some sort of an adjustment at the end of the process on those individual assessments. But I think the issue that Councilor Holt was talking about, this really became, I think part of it is going through the transitions that we've gone through citywide. I wasn't aware there were questions on surveys until January, and since that time, we thought we had a solution to that, which was the county, which was not a solution, and
The county
so we've
really
gone
pooped
to
the
the
bed.
second solution.
No way to put it. Brandon?
Yeah,
Please.
I've been waiting to
Yes.
speak on about 3 things tonight.
Go ahead. You get them all out.
Thank you. The first one, I wanted to speak on the parking, and I appreciate you for bringing it up in front of my house. It is public parking. It does limit the use of my property now. As I do come home with the trailer, I am no longer able to do so. It has limited my use of my property. But furthermore, I encourage you all to, not tomorrow morning because there's no school, but during the school week, I want you all to drive down 3rd Street, and I want you to try to pull out like you're going to the middle school. There's angled parking there at the vet's office. It's damn near impossible to see. You are putting angled parking in front of my home with teenage drivers this year, me, and if you would tell me, like, I can bring a trailer home if I put it in my driveway, cool, that's an option. How the hell am I gonna get in and back it in and get it out when I can't see the intersection? I'm not a civil engineer. I don't do this. Yet I was able to point out that that's unsafe, and now you've pulled one parking spot out. If your engineer that you hired can't come to that conclusion, and it takes a homeowner with common sense to come to that, you've clearly hired somebody who's inadequate at their position.
Absolutely.
It's bullshit. I should not have to have this conversation. You should have hired somebody who was competent, yet you haven't, and here we are. The meeting starts with them telling us that we don't know what we're talking about. To be fair, I'm not a civil engineer. I don't do surveys. So he was accurate in speaking on what I know, but he doesn't know that he has no idea what we know. So he sets a negative tone. And for the record, thank you for asking. I wasn't trying to be combative with you. I'm very frustrated with this whole process.
I understand.
You have limited the use of the property in front of my home. While it does not limit my property, it limits the use that I previously had and the property that I bought set up the way that it was. I appreciate the fact that the city's putting in a driveway. Again, for the record, I didn't ask for that. I asked for permits to do a driveway, and they were graciously denied. It wasn't a negative thing. It was, we're gonna do this when it all comes, you don't need to spend the money. However, in hindsight, had I had a driveway there already, I probably would have more of a leg to stand on telling you guys that now you are limiting the use of my private property that I was using. So while I appreciate the fact that they tried to save me the $15 permit fee, they've now given me this problem that I can't really stand up for myself for. Secondly, we want to talk about the properties being, our plats were done in the 1800s, so it is fair to say that nobody actually knows where they are. When I talked with a survey company that double-checked the survey, he had said that, our plats were done in, it was either 1817 or 1870, something along those lines. We'll say the 1800s. They were wooden stake, it's really hard to know. But I think by looking at your work here, it's fair to say that you're putting the sidewalks on the property lines. I'm losing almost 3 feet of my front yard, which as Steve, I believe is his name is, that's not my property, I never owned it, but I have used it for the 12 and a half years I've lived in my home, and it was assumed to be my property because guess what? At some point, the city put sidewalks in, and I don't think you could do that without a survey. So at some point, you determined the front of my property was where those sidewalks go. Now, you've made the argument that you can put sidewalks anywhere you want within the right-of-way. They don't have to go there. But that's not how the city does things. Let's go on a walk all around Creswell. Those sidewalks are right on the damn property line because you generally want to maximize your road space, right? Now, I'm not speaking from a civil engineer standpoint. I'm sure there's plenty of examples where that's not the case. But this neighborhood was done in the 1800s. So I don't think that any of us actually know where they are, but if we want to go on historical boundaries, I think it's fair to assume that when I look down 2nd Street all the way to Oregon Avenue, and I see a continuing sidewalk down there, and you have improved that section by the dentist office there, I think it's probably fair to assume that I don't need to lose 3 feet of my front yard, and we probably don't have room for this horrendous angled parking in front of my house, and maybe I'd still be able to bring a trailer home from work, as I do so often, if we didn't make these improvements that, oh, by the way, we have to because this is a commercial district in a residential zone. I was zoned residential commercial. So that's really frustrating that now we have to do all this stuff to accommodate the Creswell Bakery. Let's call a spade a spade. There's one damn business there. We don't need to go around and say, oh, it's these improvements 50 years down the road. The road's not gonna last 50 years. Let's look at these in fucking 50 years, excuse my language. We can deal with this in 50 years. We don't need to deal with it right now. We can make the improvements that need to happen, but why do they have to happen to this extent? Oh, because the bakery has so much damn traffic that we have to do something to accommodate the bakery. Yet you're gonna put angled parking in front of my home, and based on the plans I've seen, you're not putting any curb stops. So I'm going to be responsible for that frontage, and you're going to encourage people, generally bakery customers, to park on it. And when they do so, it will slowly damage those curbs, much more than it's going to damage any of my neighbor's curbs. Yet I'm responsible to pay for your mess up. Your engineer did something that was inadequate that I had to call out. I'm a high school dropout. Why should I figure that out? And he can't. So those are the first 2 points that I wanted to bring up. I don't even know where the hell I'm going with the rest of this. I'm so frustrated right now. But seriously, during a school day, pull out on 3rd Street with that angled parking and tell me that that's a good idea to have right next to a stop sign. It's just ridiculous. And we know how the bakery works. We can't look at it and say that, oh, well, in a perfect world. It's not a perfect world. We deal with California drivers all day parking at that damn bakery. So you have to look at a real world case, because if you're trying to set up the city of Creswell for success in the future, why are you screwing it up right now? I've been trying to make this point since the beginning of this damn thing. So to your point, they've known about this. And when this whole thing first started, Cliff very graciously came out. He showed us what we thought was going to happen. We had some issues at first, but I think he's a lot easier to work with now that he's calmed me down. But he showed us the property lines on an aerial map, and they were right on our fence line. Maybe coming in just a little bit. Now, to his credit, those are not accurate, and I can't hold that against him. But this project has been pitched to us like it wouldn't be a big deal. In fact, the first time I heard about it, it wasn't going to cost me anything because the city has failed to maintain those sidewalks in that street. And now here we are today, 12 years after I bought the house, and guess what? It's now going to cost me $5,000. Really can't complain too much because I'm getting a driveway out of the deal, so I appreciate that. But my neighbors, they were told the same thing as me, and they're not getting a driveway, and they're still having to pay for this thing that we were told we weren't going to have to. And we're residential. So I don't know what the normal residential code is for a sidewalk, but to charge us any more width than that, that's just wrong. Anyway, those are my points. Thank you for bringing it up. Thank you for letting me speak, and I apologize for my language.
Appreciate your passion. I get it.
Passionality.
Stacey?
I thought we were, at one point, we had seen 2 different maps, 2 different design ideas, and one of them had no angled
I
parking.
think the first map was all parallel and it wasn't enough parking, right?
There were a lot of us that liked that one. I think the bakery was the only one that didn't like just the straight up parallel parking.
They don't
So
like anything.
I don't understand how we landed back on, I must have missed a meeting, because I don't understand how we landed back on the angled parking.
Cliff?
There was 2 designs. The second design had angled parking on D Street. This angled parking configuration you see there has always been there. There's
So
been-
I'm confusing
there's been
maps,
different
okay.
Amounts of spaces, but it's always been in the design.
We chose
I think it's a
the
terrible
parallel-
I spoke
design.
up from the beginning.
We chose the parallel parking because the bakery wanted the angle parking, but then it might have been Brandon, but we talked about the safety issue and trying to back out and then bicycles and
It's
stuff,
terrible.
and it was dangerous, so we went back to the parallel, and that's what the bakery was upset about, because they lost parking with the angle, so that was the final one we
Downtown
did.
commercial doesn't require parking for a business, right? So we don't need to increase the unusable parking in front of my house to appease the bakery, and I shouldn't have to pay for the curb that their customers are going to damage.
I can't disagree with you.
I can't either, and, you know, it doesn't, I don't know.
Buck?
I believe it was your last city administrator, before she graciously left y'all, that told you that if you redesign this, that it was gonna cost you an additional $250,000 and take an additional year after that, so it was,
TIA or something.
yeah, whatever it's called. So it was actually your last city administrator that really screwed the pooch here. So, again, thank God she's gone.
Thanks for the clarification. It's a lot to chew
Are
on.
we-
I
what
mean,
are we voting on?
Yeah, we're not voting on anything.
Next time, I mean.
So again, The items that the council will be doing on April 14th is you're going to be holding a public hearing on establishing an LID and the project going forward for 2nd Street and D Street. And so after the public hearing, you're going to make a decision of, one, whether you're going ahead with the LID. Secondly, confirming whether you're going with the dollar figures that are in the current resolution or modifying those resolutions. You could make a decision, not to do the project. I mean, and those are all things that are options of the council. If you go ahead with the project, then we also are going to be having bids which are being compiled or are being submitted and opened on April 2nd for this project. And so on April 2nd, we'll have the bids in, and they'll be presented to the council on the 14th for potential award of the construction. And as you remember, there's been a number of work sessions that the council has gone through to get to this particular point. And so this is basically the design that council wanted to go forward with the design engineers. It's been designed. The issues that came up with the surveying are issues that came up after all that decisions were made on the layout, and so the basically if the other thing that you'll be doing on the April 14th meeting in relationship to this project will be approving a budget amendment so that you can start the project in this fiscal year so it can get done in one construction season instead of split over 2 construction seasons. So those are the issues that will be on the table for the council for the 14th.
One last question, sorry, if I may.
How sorry?
Go ahead, Buck.
Was the 10th Street project that's coming up in a couple of years, I know that was part of the Safe Routes to School grant. Was that awarded to 10th Street?
No, it hasn't. It hasn't been applied yet. You have to apply. That 10th Street project is what year?
We're 4 or 5 years out, aren't we?
Yeah.
It's 4 or 5 years out.
6 years.
Oh.
Yeah.
And so, Safe Routes to School is open every 2 years for applications. And so it may be something to consider for the next, the next round, or even the round after that, depending on the scheduling. But that could be a competitive project. So.
And, sorry, how long does it take with the tough tax or fee, whatever you want to call it? It's a tax, but we'll call it a fee.
Call it tax.
How long does it take to build those funds up to cover?
I think we estimated 3 years.
We could do a project every 3 years.
So if you're planning 10th Street next in 6 years, why not use the tough
Well,
tax?
ideally, they'd like to do it in 3 years, because we're having to use some of the tough now for your project.
Yeah.
We are.
It's not our project.
Well, for your street.
I
Sorry.
get that, but it's like, okay, well, for 6 years out.
Well, I was just saying.
We are using tough fees now to do
Yeah.
it. Joan, I know you had your hands raised. Apologize.
Looking at the diagram, I'm not sure, of course, I know we've all decided on these things, but the angled parking, I'm not sure why it has to be on both sides. It looks like the bakery is getting a couple of extra by angling them on their side. We're taking at least one of them off.
Yeah, the compact.
And if we did parallel, we'd be losing maybe 2 spots.
Since they're angled, is there a chance that everyone leaving at the same time is gonna rear end each
Oh,
other?
I've
wait,
said
no,
that
the
from the
whole thing's a
beginning.
nightmare.
They
I
hit
don't
my
even know
cars
how they
now.
designed
Or
it.
you look at it?
To kind of to try and let's get refocused so we can continue to move forward. Cliff, if we were to try and make a small suggestion like that and just remove the compact and 2 other spots and parallel that, I mean, what would that take ideally to the project? I mean, we're at a point where we gotta continue to move forward on whatever you guys want to do. I work for you, so I'm trying to do the best I can to work for you.
Well, I think my property line, we'll call it that, it's not, we've assumed that's your right of way, but my property line could probably go back to where it currently is, because there could be parallel parking there, and everyone would stay happy.
So Cliff, let me hear from you, please, to really, let's paint a broader,
We're
more
almost at a
detailed
point
picture.
of no return.
Yep.
Bid design, council approved it, it's out for bid. I'm not saying it can't be changed, but it would change the bid documents.
There would be some redlining and additions that would.
Change the bid documents.
Contractors redlining.
And remove those spots. I think you could get 2 parallel
I don't know.
spots in there possibly, but you would remove 5.
I think there's 4 in the drawing after the one's gone, right?
I'm counting
It's hard to see it.
I got 6.
It's 6, yeah.
Well, that last one, you can't really.
Well, the compact one's coming off, so.
Yeah,
They do all the time.
Well,
Well, yeah.
Okay, so we're at a point where
Anyway, let's just.
hypothetically, we're moving forward with what's in front of us. We are at a point of no return. You guys feel free to email me and the counselors with more ideas that we might be able to change, but we're at a point where we're moving forward. And I do think LID is the most fair way to move forward in the future and set the precedent. I do think the street's got to be fixed. It's unfortunate that it has to be this much money, but I want to make sure the council's at least comfortable with what you heard tonight, and that we can, on the 14th, we can scratch it, we can approve it, that we can make a decision and move forward that the people can live with. Go ahead, Brandon.
so you're putting it out to bid on the 2nd, and you're giving these documents, you're not allowing changes,
No, it's out to bids right now.
Yeah.
and it hasn't even been approved yet.
We're opening.
No, we
it's-
have approved the
approved it.
design, we
Okay,
approved
all
it
right.
meetings.
So-
No, this is the fees, the assessments is what we haven't approved
Okay,
yet.
gotcha, sorry, I misunderstood.
It's all right.
No, well, I'm trying to clarify, I don't know if I'm doing a very good job of it, but I'm really trying to get all this corralled and paint a better picture for everybody moving forward, so we can tell the neighbors, and we're transparent as the city can be. So, go ahead, Alonzo.
I would say that, I think the heart of this conversation was supposed to be tonight, most to kind of talk about what do we do as far as the, maybe, you have these options here, right? Do not proceed with the project at this time. I'm not a fan of that. Delay construction in an attempt to obtain grants, not a fan of that. Do not create a lid. I am not a fan of that either. I think we do need to create a lid. The one option here that I think is open for discussion, I have always wanted to, and been open to, is reducing the cost of that lid. I know that the last meeting we had, suggesting cutting it back to, what was it, 2 feet? 2 feet? I think it was 2 feet of sidewalk. That didn't seem like the council was very interested in that.
Is that wide enough for a stroller?
I would.
This is what people are paying.
Yeah.
I would like for us to consider reducing, how about 3 feet?
Which we can do that at the 14th.
I think
Or
30.
you could do it after the hearing.
Yes, at that hearing. I'm not, okay, we're not doing anything tonight, but it's just something to consider. Because as I read this, we still have the option of, 10th Street is supposedly the next project, and it is on the safe routes to school. We have a really, really good opportunity to get some serious grant money for that. And that's something that we could charge the new incoming city manager to try to find us some grant money for that. And to the, maybe possibly we take a look at increasing that tough fee at some point. Because everybody does pay for this. Everybody uses the streets. It's not, I know, Buck, you said that we own that street. Well, we don't own it. The whole entire city owns those streets, all of them. So I don't have any issues with everyone pitching in a little bit, maybe in the future, for for the tough to contribute to the rest of these streets. But I hope that we can consider reducing this lid as further. And two, I know we've talked, it's come up about setting a precedent. But I think the precedent we're setting is that each project is kind of assessed individually, because I think 10th Street has a good potential for getting some safe routes to school funding. What was it?
It's not a guarantee, though.
No, it's not a guarantee, but I think it's actually on our transportation plan. Yes.
Your TSP or whatever.
Yes, it's on the TSP. 2nd Street, yes, there's a huge deficit there, so we're looking at this lid. What is the other street? We just did A Street? There was no lid for that project.
Safe route to school.
Yes, and that was I think there was some safe route to school funding for that project.
don't know.
Yeah, and there was no, I think someone, during discussion, there was no lid
I don't believe there was a
used.
lid, I thought Safe Routes to
Yeah,
School paid for it.
yeah, and there was a lot of houses on that street. Fifth Street, there was a lid used on Fifth Street. And I spoke with one person that said that they weren't charged anything because they had sidewalk. So they weren't charged a lid. So I think that the precedent is that we look at every project individually. We don't have to say, well, we're gonna do this every single time for every project. I don't think there's anything that says we have to do that.
Stacy?
You're right, there isn't anything, but there are citizens that will say, you did it for them, so now you need to do it for me. That's when I talk about setting a precedent, I talk about how the citizens are going to see it, not what we're doing necessarily, but how they're going to react. If I'm a citizen and I find out that Joe down the road got a better deal than me, you better believe I'm knocking on the city's door. You know, that's just me. Now I just want to make it really clear that anything other than them funding the sidewalks basically 100% is going to require us to raise our TUF this year. It doesn't.
No, we don't have to. No, we don't have to.
We don't have to.
If you wanted to keep on,
Yes,
if you wanted to build streets in 4 or 5 years.
So you're saying that we have the funding in the TUF fee, in the TUF kitty, right?
For this project?
Yes.
Right. There's adequate funding to cover this project with
So
the
that-
subsidy.
So it's just a recommendation that we would want to raise the fee?
Correct. And
Okay.
what this really affects is your next project. Because it pushes that next project farther back.
I'm fine with that,
Yeah.
but anyway.
Yes, we don't have to raise the TUF fee.
Okay, okay.
We would just delay the next
My
project.
misunderstanding
Yes,
then,
yeah,
because
no,
I'm
no.
opposed to that 100%.
No, we don't have to.
And then my last question, Safe Route to School funding. Where does that funding come from?
It's from the state of Oregon.
Where does the state of Oregon get the money?
It's part of the gas tax. A portion of it goes
So-
to safe routes.
so,
It's not
okay,
federal. It's not-
okay.
That's
That's
one
what
thing
I
that-
wanna know.
and that's one thing I checked too, because if it was federal funding, I'm not sure, what the future is going to be for those. But this is actually state gas tax that's distributed by the state of Oregon to improve routes and safety for pedestrian and bikes, particularly related to kids
Right.
going to school. So
So I'm glad to hear that we don't have to raise the tax. That's in my head, that's what I was thinking, but I see it, that you're saying the money's there now, it just means that it would delay more projects down the road.
Yeah, correct.
It used to be that road projects would get done every 6 years, the TUF was designed to make it every 3 years. I think that Creswell's pace is more like every 6 years, so I like it. I think I'm fine with that.
Brandon?
I just had just a quick question on the Safe Route to Schools thing. I live too close for my daughters to ride the bus to school. So the bus won't get them, meaning they are required to walk to school. I'm less than a mile away from the school. What are the requirements for Safe Route?
2 miles.
So why was that not applied for? This project has been ongoing, like it's been known about since I bought my house 12 years ago.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, no, I can answer that. The project that was applied for last go-around was the top priority in the Safe Routes to School study that they did, and that project did not get funded because it wasn't competitive enough. In fact, it scored very low, and that was our highest priority. So this is a
the
very...
city of Creswell's highest priority, or
Correct.
I believe it was didn't the council, wasn't that part of the Lane Act and what Shelley brought to the table?
Yes.
And it couldn't be applied for again? Like, are we too, had we
We
not
have to
approved this, could it have
Well,
been
we can-
applied for?
It's kind of like if you submit a failed project 5 times, it's probably still going to be a failed project. So you got to get a better project.
Was Second Street ever submitted then?
No.
So then it wasn't a failed project, right?
No, Second Street wasn't. It was the street that was the highest priority in Safe Routes to School is the project that was
Gotcha,
submitted.
okay.
And that's the one that.
And that was the committee that suggested that this is our highest importance, and then Second Street was the next.
There's a lot being said tonight, so I appreciate the clarification.
It's confusing.
Yeah, lots of notes.
As soon as I start understanding it, I get confused more, so.
Debbie?
I was never for the TUF anyway, but not for increasing it either. And I know this is an offshoot of this conversation, but I think if all of the citizens around Creswell knew that the TUF teetered on going up or not going up and moving out projects further because of this for 22 people, and Creswell Bakery maybe not paying for a little bit more since they're the largest benefactor besides the city as a whole and an improved street, I think there might be more discussion.
I agree.
Well, the tough was not unanimous.
I know,
The tax.
thank you, but, yeah.
So I know we're slotted to vote on a lot of this on the 14th. Can we get an update about what the surveyor finds?
Yeah, as soon as we get some results, we'll get a report out to the council, and that'll get folded into the reports for the agenda packet for that meeting.
And that's Second Street, we've answered your questions as best we can, we're being transparent as we can, like, I'm giving you everything I got, and I can't promise it's gonna make you happy, but I swear to God, we're giving you everything we got, and I believe that in all of us here. We're fighting for you all, we're trying to do the best we can, and that's the main thing I wanna get through. If I can't save you dollars, I can at least be honest with you and let you know that I'm not gonna give anybody a better deal than you.
When the city does the next project, do the citizens get a vote on what contractors get used, like never using Steve again?
That'd be nice.
It's an interesting question. I would encourage you to share your feedback when we get our new city manager in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would just encourage the city on the next project to, find a competent city engineer that's going to find right-of-ways and make right-of-ways correct, not just design whatever they want and then change my property pins, whatever. And then also maybe as a condition of hire, the next city administrator or an employee of your choosing, for the love of God, send them to grant writing school. It's $500 and they come out with grants prepared that are guaranteed to get money. Send somebody, spend the money now for the benefits in the future.
You have to realize it's not as easy for the city of Creswell to get grants because our median income is so high. So it's not the ability that we're lacking, it's the,
Affluent.
yes, yeah.
You
the
have
metrics.
to have a project that's gonna be competitive.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Some questions have been flown all over for you and you haven't really got a chance to answer, so what is your?
Yeah, so I forgot all the questions that were going to be. I will address some of the issues with West Tech. West Tech can only design as good as the surveyor puts the marks down on the street. And so West Tech has used the survey to design this. And so they are basing their work on someone else's work. So we can throw them under the bus all we want, but the survey is what they have to use. And that surveyor's done the best he can, and we're going back and we're trying to find out what's correct and what's right.
Maybe the decency level, maybe the decency level too, what I'm getting is just the personality here of, I do remember what you said, Brandon, when he opened that first meeting, he did say, all the citizens are gonna tell you we took your land, but we're not. I mean, I think that might have been the exact quote.
He did say they don't know what they're talking about.
That may have been a quote. So for me, if I'm that homeowner and this is, I'm in their position, I'm ready to go. We're gonna dance. I'm not gonna take that sitting down, so.
Well, my issue is the design. Like, I brought it up and he acknowledged, yes, this is unsafe. Then why the hell did you design it?
And that's a fair question.
And my issue is they're now moving my pin and taking my property and telling me I'm stupid, that you can't go off of the 20-foot drivable surface, find center line, measure 20 feet to the east or west and find a flipping right-of-way.
Well, it sounds like the county's culpable for a lot of this too. The surveyor, they were just taking whatever West Tech went off. West Tech went off what the county said was good to them. So there's a lot more people involved here that have.
Yeah, it wasn't the county doing the surveying, it was a private surveyor that did it.
Okay, well, the one in, I mean,
Yeah, for the
okay. So to contain this and maybe move on to the next one, you guys feel like we fought for you enough?
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Sharon.
Cliff, you guys have been moving all the water meters. My box where you put the valve is really wet.
Okay, we'll come look at it.
Thank you.
I've also had flushing issues since they changed anyway, but I guess.
Flushable wipes are not flushable.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Do not.
The diet.
Don't you dare.
No, I just my one toilet it just won't flush now, anyway.
All right, we're gonna move on then. If you guys got any more, email, please email.
Thanks for coming. Thank you.
You'll be getting a notice, probably in the mail early next week. We'll be mailing them out at the end of the week, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Spencer, anybody gotta go potty? Can I say that out loud?
Are we almost done?
We'll take a 5, yeah, we're almost done, but Anybody gotta go?
You guys need a break?
I think we can go fairly, I can go fairly quickly. It's up to you to determine how quickly you're
Let's take a
going to go.
2-minute potty
what I
break.
needed.
2-minute potty break. Potty break. I can see Caitlin's eyes are floating.
Thanks. You do realize you're on YouTube. I'm the mayor, man.
You know what? They know who they voted for. I got a job to go to tomorrow. I got kids to coach tomorrow. I got a baseball plan to put together.
I hear you.
Since you're taking a potty break anyway, doesn't this sound like what happened to Oregon Avenue?
A little bit.
The fact that they couldn't find a monument, so Oregon Avenue does this?
Yeah.
That's what I heard when I first got here.
Yeah, it does a little bit.
Oh, is that
It really
how they
does.
ended up with that weird?
Yeah.
Kind of weird, a weird job.
They should have fixed it.
Well, yeah, they just went ahead and just put concrete down
You
and
see a lot of that where streets don't line up, different times, different surveys. You know,
like you
surveys
said, it is
have-
up to the surveyor.
I don't think that's an uncommon situation, especially when the street is 50 years old. And you've got little, these guys are built, and another section was built.
Whole subdivisions
I
there.
will say it is up to the property owners, the potential buyers of the home to do their due diligence and check those things.
Well, and then some people get a boundary survey.
It is, I didn't
Isn't
think I had to. I mean,
I-
like
I-
especially with my lot, it was done, we hadn't built on it, it's empty. There's a peg, there's a thing. I was told 195 feet. I assume that, it looked close, just eyeballing it, but I don't have an
We bought a
195
home
feet.
years ago that we found out that the neighbor behind us had moved their fence like 30 feet into our yard. And so, but there had been renters in there for years, and so we actually had to like get all legal about it to get our property back.
We talked about that before. Isn't there the assumption where if you maintain the property for over 7 years, and it might have been somebody
I think
else?
it's 10 years.
But if anytime a new owner purchases the
Yes,
property
they
that's
can-
encroached
they don't
on,
have- the
that
statute of limitations
starts
is over.
all over again. And so that's how we were able to get ours back. Yes.
Okay. Everybody ready? All right, we're coming back. Party break over. Okay.
Okay.
Letter E, draft resolution establishing purchasing authority, spending limits, and authority to execute agreements and lease for the city management and department heads. Spencer.
Yeah, one of the things that really has made me a little uncomfortable in my interim role, well, there's been a few things that made me a little uncomfortable. But one of them has been.
You're not in Newport anymore.
I wasn't gonna mention any names.
Just gonna point fingers.
But we don't have any clear guidelines of what the authorization is for the city manager, department heads, and basically council is the one that has all the authority unless you delegate that authority. This is for purchases and public contracts. And so one of the things, the only thing I've seen in writing is in the budget, there's a reference to anything over 10,000 has to come before the council. That hasn't happened in years, and I don't think you want it to happen unless you want to spend more quality time together at meetings like this. But, so I think typically a city either by ordinance or by resolution will have a clear delegation of who's authorized to do what. And so I put together a draft resolution, plan to bring this back for adoption for the council at the April 14th meeting. And what I plugged into this, and this is what I wanted to talk a little bit about, I've got that department heads are authorized to spend up to $10,000 without manager approval. The manager in this resolution can spend up to $100,000 without council approval. Anything over $100,000 requires council approval, and that's been kind of the informal thing that I think has been going on in looking at things. But if you talk to different, when I talk to different departments about what their limits are, I got different answers. So I think it's something that for a new manager coming in, it's really important to do this. So basically, there's 3 steps to the process before you can enter into a public contract or purchase something. One is the money has to be appropriated. That's part of the budget, and so you have to have sufficient funds to purchase it. The second threshold, which you adopted in November, is the resolution that tells exactly how you have to go through and solicit for professional services, purchases, personal contracts, and then construction projects. The state has made purchasing extremely complicated. So you got 3 totally different categories that have different rules to do it. That's all part of the 95, it's in this binder here in very small print, right here. That's a policy you adopted in November, and this is kind of a standard policy that cities adopt. The one thing that's missing is just this authorization resolution. So one of it is for purchasing and public contracting. The second part of this is relating to, which is incorporated in this resolution, but I wanted to make sure the council was comfortable with it. There's a provision on emergency authority. So if there's an ice storm or if there's another major event, that the resolution as drafted would allow the manager to spend up to $250,000 without council authorization in the event of an emergency. The manager then provides a report back to council at the next meeting about, what was spent to deal with that particular emergency. The areas that I think can be quite different from city to city is leases and concession agreements. So we do leases at the airport all the time. We do leases, different leases in the city. When I was in Newport, I had to bring every lease to the council, even the airport hangar lease. That's not been the practice here in Creswell. And so what I did for the purposes of this resolution is set that value at $100,000, which would be the same as the purchasing and the public contractor that would have to come back to the council for approval. That $10,000 would be defined if it were $10,000 a year, and it was a 15-year contract. That's $150,000. So that net would have to come back because you're entering into a legal document that's over that $100,000 threshold. If it was $10,000 a year and it was for 5 years only, then it could be authorized by the manager under the language that's in the draft resolution. The other area that sometimes, again in Newport, I had to bring all these back to the council, are intergovernmental agreements. And this includes grant agreements as well. And again, in the resolution I have here, it's $100,000. If council wanted all these to come back to the council for approval, that wouldn't be unreasonable either. But again, that's they're set at $100,000 in the draft resolution. So those were kind of the key pieces. I wanted to make sure that there was a level of comfort. I think on the amount, it could be $50,000, it could be $150,000. I see that a lot when I looked at other resolutions in other cities. $100,000 seemed to be about right based on kind of the past practice for what you've been doing here. So I guess the first question is on the $100,000. Is that a number you're comfortable with, or do you want a number that would be lower or higher than that amount? And like I said, I think it seems pretty reasonable.
Councilors?
I agree.
Clarification, Spencer. So as of right now, you're saying that any big purchases, 100,000 or even less, come to the council?
Well, according to the budget, there's language in there that says anything over 10,000 comes to.
So they haven't been following that rule.
Well, I don't recall a lot of items being brought to us.
No, they haven't been.
Yeah,
None of them
okay.
have.
Okay.
So typically, it's been more, the 100,000, I think, has been what's been coming here. And I think there was an understanding that if it were budgeted, it's authorized, but budgeting and authorizing a purchase is two separate things. And so I think from a good, if I were a new manager coming in here, that's one of the first things I'm going to want to know is what am I authorized to do? And I think having this resolution in place will be a really helpful tool for that new manager coming into the place. So, and the 100,000 is, I think, would you say, Jim, that's been kind of the practice?
Yeah, all of that's been the practice.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I like these rules. They're clear, they're defined.
And these are items that are going to be already kind of line item, not in the budget anyway?
Yeah, they have to be budgeted. If they aren't budgeted, then the manager has to come to the council and ask for the council to approve a budget to do that.
Which is not what she did.
Even if it's a $10,000 item.
Yeah, okay.
It's got to come to the council for the appropriation if there's not money appropriated.
The only time I
That's
remember
what,
it was
and
the
that's
ice
what I
storm.
was trying to get straight. And then just one more question on the emergency authority. Now, would we still have to declare an emergency?
That's a really good question, which I didn't answer in this, because that could be incorporated in there, but one of the things that happens with an ice storm, for example, or something that happens immediately, is you have to start making some commitments and right away, and whether that becomes declared by the council as an emergency or not, if, for example, the wastewater plant had a major breakdown and we needed to pump, $150,000 in that to get it operating, sometimes those decisions have to be made almost instantaneously.
And I thought that, the way I understood it is the declaring the emergency kind of cuts that red tape out, so you can make a purchasing decision right away.
Correct, you don't have to go through the procurement.
Yes, yes. So we would still have to probably do that?
I think the practice, and I don't know what the practice has been on emergencies here, the practice I was used to is, under the charter in Newport, the manager could declare an emergency, and we had minor emergencies and major emergencies, and if it were a minor emergency, then it would come to the council at the next regular meeting for the council to confirm that emergency. If it were a major one, then you'd have to pull together a special meeting for the council.
Because declaring an emergency also opens us to other funds, like FEMA funds and stuff like that too.
If it becomes a state emergency and if it becomes a federal.
So you wouldn't want to skip that step.
Right. So, and I'm good with this, but I don't think we're